Welcome to Raiders Roundtable, brought to you by America First Credit Union. JT along with the legend, Eric Allen, and we are thrilled to be here for a live pre-draft coverage to count you down to round one of the NFL draft. And EA, it's an honor to be with you again. I look forward to this day and opportunity every year.
This is a big day, JT, for every organization around the National Football League, everyone who has the opportunity to be a part of this great draft coverage. And it's always awesome to be here with you, JT, and all your great depth of knowledge of our great program.
Well, we're counting on you today because it feels like there's a couple of big moves that could be happening. We've been in the building for a number of hours today, and It is buzzing. I just ran into the owner in the hallway, getting off the elevator, the GM. You saw the players down in the cafeteria. You just see the staff that's working around here today for all the great people that work for this organization. This is an important day for this franchise moving forward. The Raiders have to come out of this first round with one, maybe two players that are going to have an instant impact.
They have to. And this is a great day for this organization because what happens is everyone is in the building. All the scouts from, all over the nation are in the building. Of course, your owners here, your GMs here, all the people that really matter in trying to build this football team to make it a contending team are here in the building today trying to put all their effort into getting this football team where it needs to be.
Well, here we go. I think there's a couple of things that everybody wants to talk about. The final mock drafts are out.
Yeah.
And it's moved a lot. I've been covering this for over a month and a half. I had on 18 mock draft insiders, and it's changed a little bit for the Raiders. Did the Raiders put a priority on quarterback here in the first round? Could they wait at number 13 and get a quarterback, or did they take a big swing and move up? For purposes of this broadcast, I am all over this quarterback.
Yeah,
I want the quarterback to be a big topic today because if the Raiders don't get Jaden Daniels or aren't able to move up to get Drake May and they take a shot at it, and we'll find out about that. It might take a day or two or later tonight. I'm good with that. But if they don't get the quarterback sitting there at 13 from offensive tackle to corner that you specialize in, the Raiders have some really good options tonight.
I think 13 is a really good spot. And there's some teams obviously ahead of you that they know what they want to do, right? Those quarterbacks are kind of going to go 1, 2, 3 maybe, and we may be in the mix for those situations there if we can package enough things to try and get up and get Jaden Daniels. But there's other quarterbacks who I think are viable, who fit this organization, which is really what's important, JT, is not just to get, the top-rated quarterback, but get the guy who fits you. Look at these teams in front of us, pretty much. The Bears need a quarterback. Washington needs a quarterback. The Patriots need a quarterback. Arizona's probably going to go with a fantastic receiver. Then you start to talk about the Chargers, Giants, Titans, and all those other teams. They could use a quarterback too, right? Those teams could use a quarterback too. So it's important at 13 to really be by your phone and have those necessary options available to you. So if you need to move up because someone else is kind of pushing the pocket a little bit up in front of you, you need to be able to go up and get who you need to get in order to make a splash today.
I love the quarterbacks. That's why I'm good with this. I'm great at moving up and getting Jaden Daniels. I'm great at moving up, getting Drake May. I'm great at 13, taking Michael Penix Jr. If you want the quarterback, the key to all the GMs that I've talked to in this organization over the years, one thing in common. If you love the player, don't like the player. If you love the player, it doesn't matter where you take him. You'd love to be ideal and wait. You'd love to trade back and get a player if you can. That is normally not what happens. This is the first time I can remember in a long time where the Raiders would have to give up a lot to move up to get the quarterback. I'm not talking about a first or 2 first-round picks. I'm talking about 3 to start and maybe a player and maybe a third-round pick at all. Will that be too rich for Tom Telesco, who tends to be an assassin in the first round? He's unbelievable in the first round and really doesn't have a big track record of going up and mortgaging drafts in years to come.
Yeah, I think so too, JT. When you're talking about moving up, it's not only moving up, but you're moving up past teams who you're going to face, and they do not want to help you, JT. No. The Chargers, the Broncos, those teams do not want to help our football team get back to a point where we're getting those playoff opportunities. So you see here these prospects. Of course, Caleb, had a fantastic college career, Heisman Trophy winner, and you can say what you want about the off-field stuff and the emotional things. He's going to have opportunity to show us all what he's really about. Drake May, when you talk about the physicality of the quarterback position, there's no question with Drake May. Proper size, proper weight, good arm strength. Jaden Daniels, Heisman Trophy winner, has great chemistry history and you think about what he did in college, going from ASU to LSU and really putting LSU back on the map as far as the quarterback position, these guys can really make all the plays with their legs, their arms. We understand when you're facing Patrick Mahomes, who's the gold standard in the National Football League right now, if you're not doing what he can do, you're not that kind of quarterback that people are going to think can be a franchise guy. I think there's ultimately opportunities for all these guys to play at their pace, to play at their vibe, and be really, really good ball players. I love Penix. I think he has a great deep ball. Yes. And although he didn't run a lot in college because of his prior injuries, he turned it on the combine, JT.
Well, Daniel Jeremiah, who we trust, and he's got probably the biggest mock draft of all, just mocked Penix coming to the Raiders at 13. Here's where I think is going to be critical starting tonight at 5 o'clock when the draft goes live. If Jaden Daniels does not go number 2 to the Washington Commanders, if the Commanders screwed this up because they didn't treat him right, they brought in all the other quarterbacks with him, if they don't like him or they think he's a little bit off, they don't like it, and he's available, you're going to see fireworks at number 3. Because if Jaden Daniels drops from 2 to 3, and Drake May, who was going to go number 2 for a year, everybody had him mocked at number 1 or number 2.
They did.
So it's Caleb 1. He's a lock. The Bears handled that beautifully. The Bears didn't start throwing out rumors that they didn't want him. Right. They knew their guy. But Jaden Daniels, we're not hearing that. We're not hearing that Washington's in love with him. I think we're in love with him from his connections to the coach and the fact that he's a Heisman Trophy winner. So to me, the pivot moment in this draft is number 2. The Washington Commanders, I don't think they're going to trade the pick. I think they're either going to go with the quarterback, May or Daniels. But if it's May, the phones are going to explode. And it's not just going to be the Raiders. Everybody's going to be calling to get up to 3. And then you're going to see who's shopping and who really wants to give up a lot. So remember, the first pick seems to be a lock. The second pick is where everybody's waiting. Every war room saying, what are the Commanders going to do?
Yeah, and this has been going on for maybe 2 years. Since we've known all these quarterbacks were going to be in this 2024 draft. I mean, this has been one of the best opportunities for teams to get that quarterback to build their franchise around for the last couple of years. People have been waiting, JT, been waiting for this opportunity to have the pick of all these quarterbacks. We all know that Jaden Daniels, his relationship with Antonio Pierce from Arizona State and what he's been able to do at LSU, changing schools. You saw the leadership potential that he had, the ability to be able to run, ability to be able to throw pinpoint passes. I understand people are like, hey, you know, he's small. Listen, when a guy gets to the league, we have the best of the best as far as training and weightlifting. Don't worry about all that stuff. He's going to get to where he needs to get to protect himself. I think he's going to be an incredible opportunity to have a great season for this young man. And you are right. I think the fireworks start at number 2, depending on if he goes there or not.
There are some crazy rumors out there, crazy rumors about the Chargers. What do they want to do?
Yeah.
Look, I pointed this out weeks ago. Jim Harbaugh is stirring the pot and trying to pay back JJ McCarthy for winning a national championship for him, as Harbaugh was suspended for a lot of that. So Harbaugh is going out and saying he's the best quarterback in the draft. He had the best workout. That could be true. It's probably not. It's Harbaugh. Another key to me in this entire draft is the Chargers at 5. I believe that Harbaugh wants 4 quarterbacks to go. He wants the 4 quarterbacks to go, including JJ McCarthy in a trade with Minnesota. Minnesota trades 11 and 23 to get up to 4. If that happens, then the Chargers really get the first pick in the draft, the first non-quarterback, because they have Justin Herbert. Then he can take Marvin Harrison. Then he can start taking the receiver to pair with Justin Herbert. But again, there is a lot of smoke coming out here. The only team that I think is really going to trade out of a top pick is Arizona at 4. Kyler Murray, if they trade back with the Giants at 6, the Giants can come up and say, the end of Daniel Jones, we want J.J. McCarthy. Let me tell everybody this. This J.J. McCarthy talk is real. There's enough people around the league that said he is such a winner. He's such a winner, like a Brady type of winner, that everybody wants to get up here and maybe even take him before Jaden Daniels. So let's see if that's false, if that's a rumor or it's real.
Yeah, what's important about that is just because a player didn't do it, right? He didn't show the athleticism. He didn't show having to come back from behind. Doesn't mean he can't do it. And I think when you start talking about JJ McCarthy, it's like, man, how did he get all of this run and publicity afterwards? Yes, Harbaugh is definitely going to give him, the toast of the town. Yeah, that's his college coach. What do you expect him to do? But when you start seeing him at pro days throwing the rock a little bit, when you see him scrambling a little bit, his numbers and what people thought about him went up because of those things he was able to do that he didn't do during the season. He didn't have to do. He had a great team around him, right? So you have Michigan, you have outstanding linemen, and you have a great running game. You have an offensive coach who understands how to kind of mash people up front. So you have to find ways and to kind of light that spark if you're a great quarterback in other ways. He did it in postseason. He did it in the opportunities he had in pro days and at the combine. Very, very impressed with what he was able to do after the season was over.
And he had 3 years working with Harbaugh on the whiteboard at practice and film study, and that's big. As much as I love the quarterbacks, I love the tackles better. I want to get that out of the way.
No, you don't, JJ.
I love the quarterback in this building because out of respect to the ones we have, the quarterback should lead the draft. But look at these monsters. Yeah. These are all starters day one. And a lot of ties have been to the guy that I won, Fuaga. I love him out of Oregon State. Lincoln Kennedy's going to join us coming up. Joe Alt, everyone has Joe Alt either mocked at number 5 to the Chargers or the Titans. He doesn't get past the Titans at number 7. Joe Alt is the elite tackle eligible out of Notre Dame. But then it comes to some big boys. Penn State, Alabama, Oregon State. I believe if the Raiders get either one of those two, Latham or Fuaga, I believe they're set. They will have an established offensive line now, which we haven't had around here in a while. Right. You would have Colton Miller on the left. You'd have Fuaga on the right, or whoever you want to get there as a starter. And these are not projected starters. These aren't guys you got to develop. They're starters day one.
Right.
And then maybe the Raiders could come back into the first round and get a quarterback. I don't like the odds of that. I think the quarterbacks are going to go pretty quickly here. But EA, what about these offensive linemen? A drastic need, I think, for the Raiders on the right outside.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little biased here because I saw Talisi play at Oregon State, and he was unbelievable. Yeah. The athleticism, at that size, the ability to be able to switch guys off and cut the edge off when you have a guy who's trying to dip and bend on you, and he plays against some of the better players in Pac-12 last year. You're talking about the edge rusher at UCLA was dynamite, Utah dynamite edge rusher. He was able to lock them all down. Just love the ability of this young man to be able to be at that great point where you have to throw the hands fast. Those defensive ends are trying to physical you at one point, athletic you at one point. He's able to combination all those guys. So I think that would be an outstanding pick for our football team and lock down that right side because the left side of our offensive line is pretty good here.
It is.
Yeah, so we got Andre James there doing an outstanding job. Dylan Parham and offensive tackle. So we're good on the left side. If we can continue to build that right side, that's when we can get back to doing what I think AP wants to do and be a physically dominant football team. Be able to run the football, take the football away from those Chiefs, from those Chargers, from the Broncos, get into the red zone, right? And then you're able to, hey, I'm going to run the football into the end zone. It's the easiest way to be able to do, turn around and run the football. But if you need to, throw it. But it all starts up front on the offensive line.
The Raiders have some needs, and everybody knows what the needs are. Quarterback seems to be a need, but if the Raiders had to play a game on Sunday, I think the Raiders can win with the two quarterbacks they have. I really do. I think they can win games with the quarterbacks that are on this roster, but there's more than a need, I think, on the right side of the offensive line. It's a must. Got to come out of it with the first two picks, round 1 or round 2. We'll go through the picks coming up. Raiders got to get a starter. It cannot be a projected player a year or two from now. If they're going down that road, they need a player like Fuaga who is just born to be a Raider and would start. And then, I look at the other needs. We'll get to cornerback a little bit later on, maybe another linebacker coming in here. This roster is really close. There's not a lot of holes. If you think of holes, there are a lot of teams in front of the Raiders, like the Bears, for example, the Commanders, especially the Patriots, who we've beaten the last couple of times. They got massive holes. Yeah. They got 6 or 7 starting needs. The Raiders have 2, I believe, at offensive tackle and cornerback. And then the quarterback position would be a luxury. But when Big Lincoln Kennedy comes on, I can't tell you how long it's been going back to Lincoln Kennedy and his offensive line, and Rich Gannon's going to join us also, where you just went to the Oakland Coliseum or you came to this building here at Allegiant and said, the offensive line is set. We're good. We're not going to lose the game because of the offensive line. The Raiders can button that up today in the first round of the NFL draft.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you think about when you think about our football team and our organization is anytime we've been really, really dominant, we've had that offensive line. And we've had great offensive lines from, the 70s and 80s and then that stretch there in the late 90s into the 2000s that offensive line was our bread and butter. And we were able to run the football no matter who was running. Was it Zach Crockett? Was it Wheatley?
John Ritchie?
John Ritchie. It didn't matter. Run the football, physical, being able to line up and, hit guys in the mouth. And that's really what it's about. And I can see this football team getting back to that, being able to run the football and be a dominant, really force in the National Football League. You're not going to be able to outthrow Patrick Mahomes. You're just not. I mean, he's like I said, he's the gold standard right now. So you have to find a way, like we did that last game. You know what? We're going to play some really good defense. We're going to control the line of scrimmage on both sides, and that's really what it's about, JT. And I see kind of what this football team wants to be about. It wants to be, you know what, we're going to get you in the game, we're going to hit you in the mouth and see if you respond. And not a lot of teams are able to respond now because of their quarterback is, that kind of guy who wants to throw the ball 30 or 40 times a game. Right now, we don't want to do that.
Rhett Lewis does an unbelievable job, not only for NFL Network, but for the Raiders. Does some deep dives on the prospects. His mock draft is out, and he looked into Tom Telesco and the changes.
Extremely confident with Tom Telesco leading the charge. I think we want to talk a lot about what he did with, a player like Justin Herbert. But you go back to what Derwin James has done for that Chargers franchise when healthy on the defensive side of the ball is a cornerstone type of player. Look at what he did and drafted a rookie Pro Bowler in Rashawn Slater out at left tackle. So, if quarterback's not in play, I feel very comfortable, and then went and got Zion, the next year to play the interior out of Boston College in the first round. So if quarterback isn't on the docket at 13, there's going to be a really good offensive lineman and offensive tackle there as well that I could totally see, the Raiders entertaining that possibility. And I'd have, every confidence that Tom Telesco is going to get an impact dude really from day one right there with that 13th pick.
I agree with him 100%. Great job by Rhett because he nailed it. There's going to be an offensive line starter there in a big need position for the Raiders if the quarterback, EA, is not the perfect fit. In order to get the quarterback, you got to give up a lot, and you got to make sure he's the right guy to be the franchise quarterback for years to come.
Yeah, I agree. And when you're moving up and trying to get there, you're going to have to deplete your roster of a lot of players and capital and draft pick to get up and get a guy. When if you look at this graphic that we're showing right now, different positions, offense, defense, most important position there at quarterback. Look who he got there. Slater coming back the next year. Asante Samuels, who's been a really good football player in the second round for him. Big Mike Williams, you know how many problems he has caused when healthy. Joey Bosa, a game breaker. Perryman, a really pivotal player for their team to really stop the run. We had him here a couple years ago, did an incredible job of stopping the run. And, of course, Keenan Allen, now with the Chicago Bears, I believe. But you know what kind of receiver Keenan Allen is. So that's really detailed about what kind of players you're bringing into your organization. Those guys that you see on the screen right now are all impact players. And that's the kind of players that you want, along with what our football coaches are starting to do now is not just evaluate really well, but those guys are getting better when they're on our football team. And I think that is the biggest asset for our organization right now, JT, is the players that we have gotten last year and the years before, the last couple weeks of the season, all of them got better.
I'll tell you this about Tom Telesco. He's here for a reason. There were good men who were GMs of this team in the past, and they really tried hard. But what's happened recently in the first round has put this franchise back. Tom Telesco was brought in to clean up the first round. That's what he's known for. That's his track record. He doesn't coach the team. He brings in the players. We just showed you that graphic. He is a beast in the first round. So let it be said, whatever the Raiders do tonight, Tom Telesco is going to have his handprint all over it because he's a really good evaluator, especially in the first round. Lincoln Kennedy is going to join us next from Caesars. He's got a nice assignment tonight here on Raiders Roundtable. It's our live pre-draft coverage here It's a special edition of Raiders Roundtable, the NFL Draft.
Just a lot of excitement, a lot of hard work went into this, a lot of, sacrifices, and I'm excited to, start my career in the NFL, which I always envisioned myself playing.
With the 7th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Tyree Wilson, defensive end, Texas Tech.
It's different. I never went through this process before. It's all business, and I'm excited. Not everybody got the opportunity to go through that process, and I was blessed, so I had to take advantage of it. I mean, kind of crazy that this is gonna be my home. First time living out of Texas. Really it was just all the emotions in my back of my head. I wasn't really focused on the fans. It was going to commissioner, and, hugging them, and then, just thinking about my family, really, all the hard work, the sacrifice they made for me to, get to where I am today. I knew it was the right fit. Yeah, I work hard, and, I always envisioned myself getting here. Now it's time to continue it in the NFL.
Tyree Wilson, defensive end, outside linebacker, Las Vegas Raiders. Being a Raider in all three, phases of my life is something that, God planned.
Over the past 5 years, people have been asking me, when are you guys going to have a gala? When are you going to have a ball? When we began our partnership with Las Vegas and the state of Nevada, we made a promise that you'd be getting more than a football team, that you'd be getting an army. We promised that we'd be working in the communities. We determined that mental health was something that was very important to everybody in this room. So we have decided to take this gala focused specifically on mental health.
Mental health touches every one of our pillars, but it also touches the lives of so many people in this room. We're proud to work with partners like the Resiliency and Justice Center to expand resources and services in Nevada.
It's our honor to be able to present your organization with $500,000 from the Raiders Foundation.
Tonight, when we walked in here, I had no idea that we would get a check for $500,000. With this support, I have no doubt that this construction and this center will become a reality.
The silver and black stand by and support the efforts of this community. These people have exemplified hard work, dedication, leadership, and are truly committed to excellence.
Just look behind us. 1,000+ people, packed house with the win. You got our head coaches behind it. You got our players here. We got our staff here. It's serious. It's real.
10,000 center right now. 11 now, want to go 12, get it 12. 12 now, going to go 13. 16 now, going to go 18, get it 16.
What I think about the Raiders bringing more awareness to this, what I love is it's a conversation now about it, and I think it's beautiful.
At the end of the day, this is Las Vegas. This is us. More importantly, they understand the Raiders NFL is behind it. It's serious. I've dealt with a lot of players that I play with, good friends of mine that they struggle. And for us to get back is huge.
Welcome back to Raiders Roundtable, designed to welcome the team's newest members. The Always a Raiders 2024 draft cap is available right now, featuring a Rays Shield logo over a stylish crown. Once a Raider, always a Raider. Embroidered on the side, you can get yours today at RaiderImage.com. I get a commission on that, EA. I want to sell some hats today. That is a remarkable hat. That is a fantastic hat. Yes. And I know our sons, our family, we want some of those hats.
Oh, you got to.
They're looking good. No doubt about it. thrilled about that. I'm more excited to bring in Lincoln Kennedy, who always gets a great assignment. Look at you, Lincoln Kennedy at Caesars. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, JT and EA. Look, I'm having a fabulous time outside the Omnia nightclub. Guys, this is beautiful. I'm on the patio. This is where the draft party is going to be for all the fans and family that's in town. But I've got a cushy assignment. It's good to be here. I like it. I'd rather be back in the studio, but I like you being out here, guys.
I always ask who is your jeweler? You always have something new on the road. What is that you're debuting tonight? Amazing.
Yes, just beating around. You got to know how Michelle does me. She takes care of me, does all my jewelry, and I got to give shouts out to her. So I'm always showcasing her stuff and her talent.
All right, Big Link, always on point. Lincoln Kennedy, glad to have you join us today on this great party. You've done this a couple times, right? You know the excitement of draft day for these young men. Talk to us a little bit about your process and what you were going through back in the day.
Well, first of all, I got to give you credit. I heard you from the segment before, breaking down the offensive line play and how essential and key that is. And that's big coming from a defensive back. So kudos to you, brother. Thank you for pointing us out. We are an important part of the team.
You are.
But you know what? The great thing about the draft, JT and EA and everyone out there at Raider Nation, is it gives every fan base the hope that this is the season that's going to put us over the top. And so going into it, you have all of this speculation. Now, just imagine, EA, how much the draft has changed since you and I came out of school. You know, how it became the biggest spy game where you have misleadings, people trying to throw you off and trying to throw shade on other players just so they can try to fall in their spot. But you really never know. And look, for what it's worth, I know that it's important, but I think, EA, I can share it. You and I probably share the same sentiment. We don't put a whole lot of credence in the rookies until you show you can prove and play on this level, because it's not easy. You can have all the gander and all the fodder and everything, all the glamour that's coming out of college, but if you can't play on this level, you're going to be a has-been. You're going to be written off really quick. So it's important for general managers, coaches, and clubs to get it right, but more importantly, it's important for those players to rise to that level this occasion and play at this level.
Lincoln, you were recently inducted into the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame. You're a Husky Hall of Famer. You traveled with the team in the postseason, so you know the quarterbacks here that we're talking about, Bo Nix in the Pac-12, but especially Michael Penix Jr. There's a lot of noise around the Raiders at 13, and we know your connection with the program, but you saw these guys play a lot, including Caleb Williams in the Pac-12 going from USC. He's going to go number 1. But tell us about Bo Nix and Penix and what you like about both those quarterbacks.
Well, first of all, I'll start with Michael Penix out of University of Washington. Look, I watched him blossom since he came to UW from Indiana, and he has grown as a player. More importantly, he's grown as a leader, which is absolutely essential for the quarterback position on the next level, to command the respect in the huddle. And you know what? For what it's worth, Kalen DeBoer and his staff, when he was at Washington, created an offense that utilized his strengths. That's very important. This is a quarterback who's capable of running, but I think because of some of the injuries that he had in college, he's probably less likely or less inclined to have to run or feel forced to run, but he has the ability to extend plays with his legs. Same can be said about Bo Nix, who I'll talk more about in a moment. But for Michael Penix, that left-hand spiral, that spin, he could put the ball on a dime on the corner of the end zone. Very impressive with his accuracy and his arm strength. I don't think there's a throw on the field that he can't make, so I think he'll do well on the next level. As far as Bo Nix is concerned, I've heard a lot of gander about him recently or in the last couple of months with evaluation. I was really high on the young man. I actually thought he was going to win the Heisman when the way you watch that he's played. But the great thing about him that's going to put him over the top, in my opinion, guys, he has experience. There are two positions in football that I think need as many snaps as possible: offensive line and quarterback. You have to see different time, different things, different expectations, different outcomes. You have to be able to experience that. Bo Nix has played a ton of football. I mean, he was a serious senior on the college level. I think he'll do well on the next level as well.
Yeah, I tell you, Link, seeing Oregon and Washington for the last 2 years go at it, just incredible. The talent that was on the football field. Can you talk to a little bit about pregame? Because that is the big game for both those schools as a regular season. Can you talk pregame, what Michael Penix was like during that week leading up to that big game? Did he display any type of characteristics that you think, man, that's going to transfer over to the NFL?
Well, both guys had to be a privilege of being around as they built up to this game, and both guys, I will honestly say, had that sort of maturity about them where they were business as usual, and they were going to go out there and take care of business. They know the impact, the importance they have with their particular team. So it's absolutely essential that they find a way to get out there and play the way that they did. And both games are entertaining, whether it's the Pac-12 championship or even the rivalry game that they played in Seattle. Both games are entertaining, and they gave the fans what they wanted.
Well, let's get in the trenches where you lived and look at these offensive tackles, let alone out of the Pac-12. Want to talk about a specialty for this guy? You don't have to do that much homework, Lincoln. You saw half these guys play a lot, and I love Fuaga and some of the other players. You got two players here from the Huskies. Jordan Morgan comes in from Arizona. Jackson Powers Johnson there. Just touch on two or three of them and how impressed you are with this class.
Well, Fuaga, I'll start with him in the tackle. Now, this is a guy to me who has top 10 grading potential. He's a guy like the Alts that they're talking about out of Notre Dame. He's a guy to me that could be a swing tackle, can play guard or tackle, but he's also immediate plug and play. Now, look, I know that everyone wants the sexy pick when it comes draft time. I've been around enough of these drafts to know how they want this. And of course, with this draft being very full of quarterbacks, it's going to be a natural gravitation. But just like we opened up this segment, guys, if you don't take care of this offensive line, you can't take care of a quarterback. I don't care who you have back there. So you got to get this offensive line right. So Fuaga is one of those guys that stands out to me as an immediate impact starter. But as we break down and we get more into the guards, I think it's Fuaga that stands out as one of the high-end tackles. And then Rosengarten, a little bit lower, a little bit more of a project out of University of Washington, is another one. But I don't think the Raiders need a project now. I think they need an immediate plug and play.
Yeah, for sure. I think you need a plug and play to protect that quarterback. Also, you talk about the transition now, Link, from college, big-time college programs to the National Football League. What's one or two things that they're going to have to transition, no matter who you are as an offensive lineman in college? What is that transition? What kind of impact do you think they're going to have? But how do they have that impact if they can't make that transition either by speed or power?
Well, you know, to me, EA, this day and age with the current CBA and the way things are, it's hard to develop players. So you really have to bring them in from the college standpoint and have them ready to play. So on my list of guys, there's a couple of guys that have a few dings on my list, mainly because they're coming out as juniors. And not necessarily fifth-year or sixth-year seniors. I think you kind of need that experience for offensive line. But to make the transition from one level to another, and that's college to the NFL, it's all about speed. My first year, I was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. I played guard. On the interior is like fighting in a phone booth. You've got to be able to get your hands on guys and snatch and grab quickly. And that's something these guys are going to have to learn on this next level if they're playing inside or out. But more importantly, here's the big thing. Here's the big test, and you know this, EA. The fact is that when you're playing in college, you might play against an All-American and all-Chingus-Dominguez, all-world guy every now and then. But when you're playing in the league, every game is against an all-world guy. So you've got to bring your stuff every week, and you've got to work on it. And for the most part, because development is so hard on this next level, guys are going to have to do it on their own. They're going to have to find a way to train and get it on their own. So if they have problems working with, need more work with their hands or their footwork, they're going to have to hit that speed bag or do that jump rope, do those types of necessary exercises to make them better to be able to compete on this level, or they're going to get passed by.
Lincoln, the guard out of Washington, Fountainu, and some of the other guards here, this is really important because you value the entire offensive line. Andre James got a contract extension, so he's here. Dylan Parham was a third-round pick. He was the first pick in the draft because we had to give up 1 and 2. He's starting now, and we know about Colton Miller. Is a priority for you on the outside or the guard position? Because you often talk about players who can play both, but I think right tackle's more of a priority.
Well, I do believe that it is is more of a priority, JT, and I do think somebody like Fountainu can play either guard or tackle, though I think he's better suited for guard. Here's a reason why a player like that makes sense. A couple reasons. He's a utility player. He can play guard or tackle. And you know what? One of the biggest intangibles that most people don't talk about when it comes to draft, you have a guy who grew up right down the street in Clark County, Nevada here. That's Fountainu. And the fact is that those types of impact players, not only coming out highly touted, possibly the first round or a high pick, those sell tickets because guys want to see their kid play. They want to see their young man play or somebody they have familiarity with. So that helps, especially for a home crowd. But here's where I think you get a double bonus with a guy like him. As I said, not only did he play here, but the fact he could play guard or tackle, and I also think he's a plug-and-play player.
That's what you need for this point. All right, Link, talk to us a little about the sleepers in the Pac-12 you've seen. And first of all, hold up. the Pac-12 is over. We all know that, right?
Well, that's why he went.
Stop!
We
Stop!
all know
I don't want to hear that. Don't remind me.
Man, we all know that.
Well, he got a travel budget to say goodbye.
Oh my!
He went, not only did his team go to the national championship, he got a chance to go to Allegiant Stadium, go there. Hey, Jaden Hicks grew up in my backyard, played ball with my son. My son represents him. I want to get that plug in. I'm so proud of him. So I watched Jaden in my pool when he was 9 years old, and all of a sudden he could go in the second or third round. This is a really good safety who the Raiders took a look at a pro day here.
Ball hawk. And what I mean by that is this guy finds himself always around the football, has great tenacity, decent speed, pretty strong in the coverage for a safety, too. It does well in that position, playing in space. But he is a ball hawk, and he likes to be around the ball. He likes to get involved in tackles. And I think that's what you need, especially at a safety. I mean, I can't speak to it as much as EA can, but I think he kind of agrees with me. When you have somebody who's always on the camera, no matter where you have him, he's always in the scene on defense, he's always around the football, that's somebody you want on your defense.
Yeah, and this kid played at Gorman and on a great team and didn't get recruited to Notre Dame and LSU and all that. Went up to Washington State with a chip on his shoulder, played in the Apple Cup and picked off Penix.
Played like it, too.
And he played really big, so that's someone to look at here. You mentioned Bo Nix as we see this. The edge rusher, Trice, 82nd overall prospect from the Athletic from Washington also. Then there's an edge rusher also from Utah, Jonah Ellis, I know you want to touch on.
Well, here's the thing. I played against Jonah's father, Luther Ellis, when he was in the league, and he promotes the same type of tenacity his young Luther Ellis put in coaching defensive line at Utah. So he created a monster in Jonah. I'm surprised he's not higher ranked than he is. But as you well know, you can never have enough rushers. And what we've seen in the NFL these days is we've seen sort of a rotation amongst guys that get your best players on the field. But even when you make like a second team or even a third team player, can they come in and make an impact? That's what I think about some of these sleepers, whether it's Trice or Ellis. I think these guys have potential to be an impact players and could be very involved in teams' defense and could be good for the Raiders if they're looking at them.
Yeah, I tell you, when you're talking about Washington and how they develop players, it doesn't matter the coaching staff either. It just seems like when you go to Washington, you get there and you may be a 3-star guy, and then by the time you're ready to get out of there, you're a draftable prospect, second, third, fourth round. Talk to us a little bit more about Trice and how he's able to what's his positives and negatives going into the draft?
Well, negatives is probably because he's undersized, and he's not as big of a guy. But you know what? Look, when you look at the Von Millers and you look at the Lloyds of the league, you see that they're not really big guys. They have their speed out. But the reason why that size comes into view for me, EA and JT, is because you have to be able to play against the run. And if you have a big tight end over you and a big tackle and you're undersized, you're probably not going to be able to get that space. Now, we as good as Max Crosby is, one of the things that he's blessed with arm length as well as size. So he can stand off those, some of those strong power runs. That is. So that's the big thing about Trice, undersized. But for me, I still think he has a great tenacity. They list him as an edge rusher. I still think he's more of an outside linebacker. And I think that if he gets to the next level, or when he gets to the next level, there'll probably be some hybrid defenses that will play him at that defensive end outside linebacker spot, like a DeMarcus Ware was back in the day.
All right, my friend, you'll be on stage at the Omnia. Some of the biggest DJs in the world have been on that stage. You will be there for the pick. Lincoln Kennedy with the 13th pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. Where do they go, Link?
Well, I mean, it's a big question, but again, I'm of the minority when I say I don't think they need to address quarterback. It's hard to pass up some of these guys. I get it. I think they need to find a way to address that offensive line, get that solidified, and then we move on from there because this draft is full of good guys that can contribute to the Raiders.
Yeah, you're not shaking your head. You didn't expect that. You didn't expect anything different from him, did you?
I knew Link was going to say offensive line. There's no doubt about it, and I love him for that. So great talking to you, Link, man. You're always in touch, man. You're looking cool. You're looking awesome, man, and take care of yourself down there.
Hey, Link, one more quick follow-up we want to know here. Anyone specific on that offensive line? I know you mentioned a few guys, but if you had to put your name on it, Fuaga, when you look at that offensive line up front, who's the Raider that you think is the guy who starts week one?
I think best suited, I think it is Fuaga, to be honest with you guys. I think that he is a true Raider through and through, and I could see him bleeding and breathing silver and black.
Love it. We'll see you out there later, Lincoln. Have a great day.
Absolutely.
How about that? Lincoln Kennedy. Now he gets to go back, slide over to the party, and meet the fans and everybody who's going to be out there. I'll tell you, the Raiders, the Raiders go all out with these draft parties.
Yeah.
You saw, if you were coming back watching on all our platforms, the Raider Gala, which was incredible. David Foster, all the performances, all the money that was raised, Mark Davis in the tuxedo welcoming so many big players in the community there. The Raiders, when they go big, EA, they go really big, and today is a very important day for this organization and the city of Las Vegas.
Yeah, and people don't understand how many things the Raiders do during the week, right, that never gets brought up. They're always in the community. This organization is number one when it comes down to bridging that gap between, players, community, coaching staff, organization, do an amazing job. And it's just they continue. And this draft process, we've been a part of it for the last couple years, and it's been awesome,
Well, when we come back, we're going to dive into it. You'll hear a little bit from Bucky Brooks. We'll get you ready for what could be some of the other big moves in the division in the AFC West. A lot happening today that will affect the Raiders coming into this year's schedule. All right here on Raiders Roundtable.
What's up? How we doing? Good morning, Papa. Yeah. Hey. Feels right, man. Woo. There you go. That's nice. Sudden death real quick. Let's get it.
Full food bar, snacks.
Hold up. Oh, y'all see
What's up, Raider Nation? This is Gardner Minshew, man. Just so happy to be here. So excited to get to work and put on a show for y'all this fall. Here we go. Okay, go ahead and put the pen down. And then...
Raiders! There we go. That's it.
Minshew to the air, taking a deep shot to the end zone. Pierce! He's got it! Touchdown! Gardner Minshew said, we got to get Pierce going. Maybe a deep shot early. Well, there's the deep ball early.
This is the kind of favorable third down and distance that Indy's hoping to deal with today. 3rd and 2. Fake handoff to Moss. Minshew! Minshew in! Touchdown! Minshew just takes it, goes north and south, and what a play. Was that a little shimmy shake at the end of that for the touchdown celebration? Man.
What's up, Raider Nation? It's EA. On this special edition of Microsoft Breakdown, we're looking at one of the newest Raiders we signed in free agency. All right, Gardner Minshew in the building, Raider Nation. And sometimes, to be a player in the National Football League, you got to know you're going to get hit, but you guys still have to deliver an accurate ball under duress, under pressure. And when you turn on the film, this is what it takes to be a NFL quarterback. You know you're going to get hit. Here, you have to be able to be tough. If you're a quarterback, you have that free blitzer. He's able to kind of walk back a little bit with that accuracy and that anticipation. This is what a quarterback does in the National Football League. You have an understanding of where the routes are going to develop, but you have confidence in the route, you have confidence in the offense, you have the confidence in the anticipation of the throw to be able to make it happen. On the deep ball, you love the accuracy in this situation here. Coming off the RPO, you're making a critical throw down the football field in a meaningful time. Just an accurate throw. The accuracy, the anticipation throws, you love to see that from Gardner Minshew. Pocket, really nice. He's able to stand in the pocket, good feet. This is not easy, guys. The placement on that ball between two defenders, very impressive. These are the kind of throws that continue to pop up on film when we're talking about Gardner Minshew. Can you be mobile? Can you run, Gardner Minshew? What if we put you in situations where you're in the red zone? Can you make it happen? Yes, I can make it happen. Gardner Minshew showing that he has legs. Not saying we're going to run him like he's an option quarterback, but if you see this as a defender, now you know that you have to be aware. You have to guard against a quarterback being able to run for a touchdown. We haven't seen that in Raider Nation in a long time. This is a design play run off the RPO. He's going to pull it and take it himself. This shows that he has confidence in his ability to be able to get it done with his legs. And for a defense, defensive backfield, defensive lineman, fourth quarter, guys trying to be mobile, make a play, very important. And you have to be able to do that in today's game to take the pressure sometimes off the running game. Really like that fact about Gardner Minshew. He can be mobile, and he's accurate, and he can anticipate the throws. That's it on this episode of Microsoft Breakdown.
I am a huge Michael Penix fan, and one of the reasons why I'm a Michael Penix fan is I don't know if there's a better deep ball passer that we've seen in some time. This dude is a big play machine. If you watched him at UW the last 2 years, I mean, just over the top, back-to-back years with over 4,000 yards. People talked about just the amount of splash plays that offense produced with him under center. And the thing about Michael Penix, because we've kind of reached a point where everybody's about the off-schedule plays and the spectacular plays that happen outside of the pocket. And that's not necessarily in his game, but in the pocket, when protected, there's not a better passer when it comes to pushing the ball down the field. And I just think about the Raiders and the tradition of the Raiders, and the Raiders have always been a big play bombs away team when they've been at their best. And I think if Mr. Davis was still around, Mr. Davis would point to Michael Penix and be like, that's the guy, because he loved the long ball. And I still feel like that's a big part of the history of the Raiders. And I think that has to be a part of the evaluation.
Welcome back to Raiders Roundtable, brought to you by America First Credit Union. Bucky Brooks played for this organization. Yep. He just mentioned Mr. Davis going out and getting him, and that's changed a lot over the last month. About a month ago, when everybody talked about Michael Penix Jr., it was about getting him early in the second round or trading back into the late first round and getting him. That ship has sailed, in my opinion. If you want him, he might be gone before 13. Denver's picking at 12. Minnesota needs a quarterback, and he is part of the hype train that we're seeing with JJ McCarthy in the last 2 weeks, Michael Penix in the last 10 days. The quarterbacks are hot. As we're back on Roundtable, can the Raiders get one by waiting at 13, or do they have to move up and make the move?
I think we can wait until 13 and get a good quarterback, JT. And when it comes down to the process, everyone has their own way of kind of choosing, and we're starting to see some folks kind of add up, Penix, 13, Raiders. Hey, man, really good marriage there. And what happens, I think, is once you get to this point, you pick a guy who fits what you're trying to do. The fit has to be there, JT. Right. You're just not grabbing a guy because of the numbers he has, the 4-star, this and that, but does he fit what you're trying to accomplish? And if he does, then that's your guy. And right now, as we saw coming down the stretch for our football team, what did we see? We saw some deep shots, right? We saw some play action. We saw some deep shots, able to get the ball down the football field. We understand that's kind of our brand, what we want to do. The fan base gets excited. Yeah. So this young man in Penix has one of the best deep arms in the draft this year. We know he can run a little bit. He doesn't have to. We're a pocket kind of presence football team already. So if he's there at 13, and I don't even call it falling. I mean, if he's there at 13, I see you got to pick him up.
Yeah, the only other unique aspect of this move potentially would be is that Gardner Minshew, and a great breakdown from you for those who watched on YouTube, he can play. Yeah. He can play. And Aiden O'Connell fought his way into a position where he won 3 big games late, last quarterback to beat Kansas City as they went on to win the Super Bowl. The guys in this building at quarterback can play. So if you're bringing in Michael Penix Jr., he's not going to play. He's not going to play the first handful of games, but he will be the franchise quarterback going forward, and that train will leave the tracks at some point. I can promise you this. If the Raiders do take him at 13, in the building, everyone's going to love that pick, and we'll support it, as all Raider Nation will. But the critics outside this building are going to say the Raiders reached. Mark my word. They're going to say the Raiders could have got him at 22, 28. I disagree. I think that Penix, if you don't get him at 13 and you get cute and you want to trade back in and get him, that is risk-reward, and I think the risk is too high. Now, I wanted to ask Lincoln this, and I wish I could. I'll see him tonight at the event. What if the Raiders ended up taking Penix at 13, then traded back into the first round for the tackle? The tackle will be there, not the top tackle, but maybe the third or fourth, and then you can get 2 of the ideal players in the first round.
Love that. And that's the best of both worlds. You're getting your quarterback who we can build around for the future, because I think Minshew is a really competitive, spicy guy, right? And he's going to get you some wins with his ability to be able to just get it done, right? You can run with the play action, you do this and that. but you get the quarterback, and then you have the opportunity to come in and get an offensive lineman to help that right side of the offensive line. So no matter who's the quarterback, you're getting some help there. I think that is critical, and that's really the move. That's the best of the best chances of us really satisfying us for the future and us right now.
The first job that Jim Harbaugh ever got in the NFL post his career was with the Raiders.
Yeah.
Al Davis hired him, and he could have ended up here. A lot of changes around. A lot of people were talking about Jim Harbaugh maybe as the coach if it wasn't going to be Antonio Pierce. He's the coach of the Chargers now, and I can see right through him. I know exactly what he's doing. I think he wants Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 5. He wants Marvin Harrison Jr. to drop. There's a crazy rumor that Schefter and a couple had to talk about. What if Harbaugh took JJ McCarthy and tried to trade Justin Herbert tonight? Although that to me is a chaos theory.
Yeah.
But I believe that Harbaugh wants an ideal offensive weapon at 5 to pair with Justin Herbert because Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and that era coming to an end. This Marvin Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze, one of these guys are a lock to be a great receiver in this league.
They are, and there's no doubt about it. But Jim, you just don't know if Jim's going to go back to really his roots of being a Michigan guy and just want to run and pound the football. So you want to go and get a big, sturdy offensive lineman or a defensive lineman to kind of set the tone because he understands that football games are won up front on either side of the football. That's the way he built those Michigan teams. If you look at all of them, great running game, physical up front, edge rushers, great in the middle of the football field. But, again, you have an outstanding quarterback. And I know he loves Justin Herbert. And you want Justin to be able to have players around him to be able to get the ball to because you know who you're facing each and every week.
The reason why he's the coach of the Chargers is because Sean Payton didn't want it the year before. Sean Payton was working at Fox. He was right there in L.A., could have settled right into Justin Herbert. He went to Denver because he has more say in that organization. He likes the ownership better. Ownership's the richest ownership now in all professional sports. He's going to be able to mold the franchise. And then Sean Payton just got very weird with what he was doing. Russell Wilson ran Jerry Jeudy out of there. Denver almost looks like they're in a rebuild. They're picking in front of us at 12. I'm fascinated by what they did, and they just signed Zach Wilson.
Yes.
You and I talked about that today. Tell everyone what you thought about that signing here because maybe it takes the quarterback out of play for the Broncos at 12.
Right. I think he wants someone to mold. And when you're talking about Russell Wilson plays the way he's going to play. You're not going to be able to really mold Russell Wilson. So all of the verbal altercations off the football field, that it was unnecessary because you're not going to change the way this man plays. But with Zach, now you have a young guy who's just at the forefront of his career. You can get him and mold him the way you want him to be. He is at the point of his career right now where you're going into year 4 maybe or 3 or 4 where he just wants someone to kind of get him, put him in a classroom and say, here's what we want from you. And I think Peyton is at the point right now, he's on the hot seat a little bit. He has ran through that organization.
Yes.
Right? That organization is supposed to have been a playoff caliber football team this year. This guy has been to a Super Bowl. He's had the great Drew Brees. He's done fantastic things down in New Orleans, and he wasn't patient enough to wait for this Charger job. That's really what happened. He wasn't patient enough. He wanted to get in right now. And so he had to take this Denver job. And you go in, you think, man, Denver Broncos, they have a receiver. They have a quarterback who's been to the championship. The defense is pretty good. Man, I'm going to come in here, and it's going to be click-clack. I'm going to be right on the roll.
Sure.
Didn't happen that way. Right? So right now, he's under pressure. And I think this quarterback for him is a way for him to say, hey, I have a young quarterback who I can mold, who has some things that are measurable, great arm, can run a little bit, but we have to find out what the immeasurables are with Zach Wilson, and I think I can bring them out.
I'll tell you, Sean Payton's done us a favor
here
in this building because we've won 8 in a row. 8 in a row against Denver, and we, the Raider Nation, have fired 2 coaches, Nathaniel Hackett and Vic Fangio. They didn't get fired because they lost to other teams. You lose to the Raiders, it's magnified. And he hasn't beaten the Raiders yet. He's 0 for 2 here, and we got to sweep him again. Time is now to get those 2 wins. Wait till you see what we got coming up next with this guest list. Like Paul Gutierrez is going to come in studio. Deshaun Reed does an amazing job also from The Athletic. Hall of Famer Charles Woodson.
See Wood.
He He's in the building working today. Vinny Bonsignor will check in. So we got a great lineup coming up here as we're live from Raiders headquarters here, as we are excited to be here for a special edition of Raiders Roundtable, brought to you by America First Credit Union. When we come back, it's hour number 2 on all the platforms as we build up to the draft at 5 o'clock Pacific time right here at the Raiders headquarters, the facility, day 1 of the draft.
The Raiders actually weren't the team I was looking at. My agent didn't hear anything. They were not on my radar. I remember going into the draft and my agent said, yeah, maybe 5th round, maybe 6th round. I think the Titans might be interested in the 4th round, possibly. First round came around, I'm with my siblings and we're in the dorm. Had a couple of friends over and we're just watching the draft, not expecting anything. I think it was right after the 30th pick and I get a call from Al Davis saying, how would you like to be a part of the Raiders? And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like trying to figure out. We're at the end of the first round. Paul Tagliabue got up there and butchered my name.
31st selection in the 2003 NFL Draft. The Oakland Raiders select Asomugha Nnamdi, cornerback, California.
Was he trying to say my name? And we couldn't really rejoice because it kind of took the steam out of it. But then my picture showed up and we went crazy. And then my dorm flooded with people that were watching the draft, and everybody just started coming in. They were like, what? You know, going crazy because I'm at Berkeley and Oakland's 5 minutes away. I think I drove up like an hour later and was walking through the facilities with my cousin and did a press conference, met the team, and then I came into camp. I was 21 years old, ready to go. It was really just Al Davis. I heard from scouts throughout my early years with the Raiders that he was not gonna consider anyone else for that first pick. I played safety throughout college, but he saw speed and he saw size, and he said, I think I can develop that guy into an NFL corner. I'm so grateful that it turned out the way it turned out. Not even that I went in the first round, but that I was at an organization that cared so much about you and cared so much about family.
BMF title, brother. Put it on. Back at it. Let's get to work, baby. Let's go. Let's roll.
What's up? Good morning. Glad to be back here at Raider Nation. Year 7. Excited to be back. You know, Raider Nation. Let's get it. All right.
We back! I see what's going on, baby. Raider Nation, turn up!
First of all, I appreciate everybody being here. Totally voluntary, get it. But Max will always talk about it. You want to be great. Gotta show up every day. Right? Gotta show up every day. There's a standard, there's the expectations, and then there's the Raider way. Get better. D-line, get better. Wide receiver core, get better. QBs, get better. Specialists, get better. AP, get better. Patrick, get better. There's a reason I brought Marvin Lewis in, former head coach. Joe Philbin, former head coach. Why? Get better, AP. The passion has to show up. If you don't love this shit, shame on you. If you don't love this, shame on you. Shame on you, man. We're fortunate to be in these seats. I'm bringing my spot. We're earning the right to keep going each and every day. So show that passion and love for the game and for being a Raider. We're on the same page? Let's be fucking great today. Appreciate you. Let's go.
Welcome back to Raiders Roundtable as we get you set. This is our live pre-draft coverage on all the platforms here as we bring in Paul Gutierrez from ESPN. And, man, have you been busy. And the Raider Nation is asking you, getting a lot of downloads and a lot of opinions here. Welcome in today for what feels like a really important day, considering some of the past drafts in Las Vegas and a lot of players not being here anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you're looking at players that not only fit schematically but fit the culture, and that's something that's really taken on a new life under the new regime, so to speak, of Tom Telesco as general manager and obviously Antonio Pierce as the full-time head coach. So they're not only looking for guys that fit the scheme and what they want to do that way, but they want guys that are going to fit what it means to be a Raider, so to speak. And what was pretty illuminating from Telesco last week was he said, and it's obvious, but to say it and to put it out there, that he's drafting guys not just for now, but for 4 or 5 years. So that kind of sticks and makes a little bit of sense into terms of when you're trying to figure out what is the philosophy going forward.
Yeah. Do you get a sense of, in that evaluation process, you're talking about, great players, things you can measure, Raider kind of vibe, but do you have to include where we are as far as Las Vegas? Are you getting a sense, is that in the evaluation process also?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be like, being a UNLV alum myself, when guys are being recruited to go to school, yeah, you have to fit not only the culture of the franchise, but the city as well, right? Because there's a lot of other things that guys can get into trouble with here too. So there's the character evaluations that go on to it. But it is the NFL, and talent seemingly trumps a lot of that when it goes forward, too.
When did you see the culture change? You got a lot of access. You were in front of Josh McDaniels before he was let go and Dave Ziegler. And then when it flipped with Antonio Pierce, talk to me about that in real time when you first felt it and saw it.
Day one, when Antonio and Champ Kelly were in front of us in the media workroom, and he started quoting NWA. Because I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, while that's understood and that's always been out there, you've never seen somebody in a position of power to actually start quoting NWA, talking about the Raider hats, talking about being in South Central LA. I was 18 years old when Straight Outta Compton came out, so that hit a bell with me. I'm 18 years old. I'm in Barstow, Southern California, but I'd go to LA Raider games all the time, and there was just a different vibe to it, a certain feel. And I remember even Mark Bedain, the former team president, he told me, that I had LA Raider blood in me. I'm like, no, I'm covering the team. I'm not part of the team, but I understand what you're saying. So when Antonio said it that day, that's when you felt it. And then you go in the locker room and you see the guys just felt like they could exhale. And they're playing hoop in there. And it just seemed like a lot of guys are just able to just play and not worry about looking over their shoulder. That's not a shot at the previous regime. It kind of is what it is. And that's, to answer the question, day one.
Yeah, I think we all felt that.
Yeah, we did.
A little bit. And on the flip side of that, I think that this coaching staff gave the players the ability, and we talk about this all the time, is to get better. You saw players get better. From week to week. Talk to us a little bit of how you saw that process happen.
You saw guys not thinking and just playing and reacting and reading and reacting. It reminded me a lot of, and I'm going back here, I've covered this team since 2005 in one way or another, and basically in L.A. when I was a kid in junior college, but it reminded me of when Hugh Jackson came in and he literally went to Darren McFadden and said, hey, what kind of plays do you want to run? And it blew Darren's mind because nobody had ever asked him before. Now, that's not saying that the inmates are running the asylum, so to speak, but if you're not going to put your guys in position to succeed, then what are we doing? And that's what it felt like going forward from there. Now, you have a coach is a coach, a GM's a GM. They're in charge, so everybody has to fit their vision. But there has to be more of a collaboration. And with Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce, it feels like there's more of that. There's something that it's different about being with the Raiders, being a Raider. And that's what Mark Davis told me that first day when he promoted Antonio to interim coach. Was he understood the culture, he understood what it meant to be a Raider, and that meant a lot to Mark.
So the addition of Christian Wilkins adds a beast to the interior of the defensive line. Corner seems to be a really big need. Do you reach at 13 for a corner? Because we've seen a lot of corners come through the organization in the first round that haven't worked out, especially recently. Because the defense might be 1 or 2 players away from being a top 5 defense, not a top 10. Or do you just think offense is so important here because it's such an offensive-heavy first round?
It just depends, again, upon what Tom Telesco's vision is. Does he want to make a strength stronger? And if that's the case, then I guess you go get that cornerback. And I'm sitting here with a potential Hall of Famer who can speak on that better than I can, obviously. But the Raiders have been burned so much in the first round on cornerbacks. You got to go back to Nnamdi back in 2003 to find a cornerback in the first round that actually hit for the Raiders. And it just seems to me that the defense is nice. They could actually go out there and play a game today if they had to defensively. Offensively, to me, it's Jaden or bust. Moving on up if you want to trade up to try to get him, but you got to get to 2 or 3. If Washington messes around and doesn't take him at 2, then the Patriots are open for business, and then it's going to get crazy.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't happen and the draft just comes to him, I've been, in our mock draft on ESPN NFL Nation this week, I took an offensive tackle from Oregon State, put him at right tackle.
You did?
I took Fuaga and got a couple thumbs up from people in the organization for that. I'm not going to, scoop myself here or anything.
Right.
But it makes sense because the plan there then for me was if you get that tackle there, the right tackle becomes even more important because if you're going to go back and get Penix later in the first round or even if he falls to you in the second at 44, the right tackle becomes even more paramount because he's the guy now charged with protecting the quarterback's blind side because the quarterback now in Penix is a lefty.
Yeah, and we talked about the left side being intact for the most part. You have a strong enough right side of the offensive line. Yes, you can use some definite help there, and no matter who's at quarterback, and we talked about this earlier, no matter who's at quarterback, you have to have the opportunity to be able to feel comfortable and dominant on Sundays or whenever you're playing. That your offensive line is going to give you opportunities to keep the ball away from the Chiefs or for the Chargers, whoever it is. So I agree with you at some aspect that offensive line is so important. It's hard for me to get out of there. But this is a draft, as you can see on the screen, there's a lot of quality at the offensive line, correct?
And that's the thing about it is if you have that number 13 pick, that's a premier pick. That's a premier selection in the draft. Wouldn't you want to then use a premier selection in the draft on a premier player rather than the 5th or 6th best player at a position at that point?
Great point.
Unless you're totally in love with that guy, and then I go back again to the days of covering this team. Hey, if you love Darius Hayward-Bay, go get Darius Hayward-Bay when you probably could have got him later, traded back, got some more picks, whatever. We don't know what Tom Telesco does yet in this building in these colors. We can look and see what he did with the Chargers over a decade with them. And he hit on those first rounders. But then again, a lot of those just kind of fell to him as well. And, if you combine his success in the early rounds with the Raiders' recent success on days 2 and days 3, okay, now you're cooking with gas, as somebody in this building told me.
Yeah, we don't go back too long ago where they were going to work out 8 offensive linemen in the preseason.
Right.
And put that. I never understood that. I didn't support that on the air from day one. I didn't think that you want to take – a 7th round pick, a 5th round pick, an undrafted guy, put him out there, have him compete, and whoever's left standing will go with that. And they were like swing tackles. I said, no, this is not the draft to do that. This is the draft to say, we got the guy. If it's Fuaga, he was born to be a Raider, nasty, drive you into the ground. You take the pick, you wish the next guy good luck. But as you said, there's a chance now to trade back in. What do you think about Tom Telesco with that? Because we saw Michael Mayer last year after the first round. These guys didn't go home. They were like, that's the guy we have to get. They did everything they could. Could something like that be brewing, Paul?
Potentially. And looking back, I did a story that posted yesterday and looking at Telesco's past, his history in the first round. Only twice did he trade up in the first round to get guys, in 2015 and in 2020. Melvin Gordon was one of them, and the other name is escaping me at the moment, the linebacker from Oklahoma.
Murray.
Yes,
Murray.
Kenneth Murray. Those are the only 2 times he's ever traded up, and they were minuscule kind of moves. He moved up from 17 to 15 in one of them, and so to go all the way up, like from 13 to 2 or 3, that's something that you wonder. And I hate to use the phrase if he has the stomach for it, not necessarily because he'd be scared to do it, but that's just not in his wheelhouse. So you got to figure it out.
You know the owner. You know the owner and you know the coach. Now we have a new GM. I mean, that's the big thing. The big swing, I think, is going to be out there. I've been talking about this move for a long time. As you're talking to a lot of people in and around the league, the Jaden Daniels move seems like a perfect fit. But as you came in here, we were touching on, how does Washington handle this? Did Washington alienate him in the last 48 hours with his representative saying, no, they didn't treat us like they didn't want us to leave the building? And then all of a sudden, if it gets to number 3, how easy is it to make that call to the Patriots at number 3 for Jaden Daniels instead of going up to number 2?
Yeah, I guess Jaden didn't like the speed dating access of going to top golf with all the other quarterbacks. When you're supposed
Vegas,
to be
we got like 4 new guys.
So, it's when I heard about that and saw that, I said, oh, somebody in the Raider building is kind of like, licking their mouth and kind of rubbing their hands. And then, okay, maybe this is where it happens. That, I think, is the Raiders' best hope, is that Washington just passes on him, or Washington trades back and gets out of that number 2 spot. And then, again, the Patriots have said from day one that they're open for business. It just depends, again, what is that cost? Mark Davis has told people around, and I know this too, that, yeah, they have his quote-unquote blessing to do whatever they feel needs to happen, as long as it makes sense. So, again, you're handing somebody a rope and you're saying, you're going to hurt yourself? You're going to be a cowboy. So go ahead and do what you guys got to do.
Let's take a look at these recent trades overall. Some of them haven't worked out well. Obviously, very surprised Bryce Young. It was all about C.J. Stroud. Then you look at the Trey Lance deal, which you covered with the Niners. That was a disaster overall. And then Justin Fields now, that was the talk around here potentially with Luke Getsy coming in here. So let's look at a couple of these, Paul, and talk about risk reward, and it could really bury a franchise back. It didn't hurt the 49ers as bad because they had such a loaded roster.
Well, not only that, but they fell into Brock Purdy with the last pick of the draft. So it worked out just as they planned. No, that's exactly what saved them, because the 49ers had just fumbled that quarterback position for so many years, and Brock Purdy shows up as Mr. Irrelevant and makes them very relevant. So that saved them. And then, and to me, it's like, and I wrote this a couple of weeks ago too, was looking at that draft when they went up for Trey Lance. That's kind of the blueprint. It starts there for the Raiders. But then they went from 12 to 3. You're not talking about going from 13 to 2, plus a couple years of inflation in what that draft, that mock draft kind of that chart goes. So there's some more things that have to happen there. I think you start with 3 first-rounders plus a player.
Wow.
And then you go from there.
Wow, that's a lot. And if the end result is not Patrick Mahomes, right, because it's the same situation, then if you're comparing trading up to try and get the next Patrick Mahomes, I mean, the percentages of that.
You cannot get the next Patrick Mahomes unless you do something like this. I mean, it would be.
But is there a guy in this draft who's going to be that type of player? And you have to wonder, if you've done that in the past and it hasn't worked out, you're going to be a little hesitant to be able. And then the recent history outside of Mahomes. So again, I think 13 is a good spot. I really do. I think 13 is a good spot if you want to get that quarterback. I think one of those quarterbacks is going to be there.
Penix will be there. It just depends upon is he your guy? Are you that in love with him? Is he your Darius Hayward-Bay? Because you could have got him later. I'm not comparing him. I'm just saying, it's not a shot. I mean, DHB had a decent little career.
He did. Yeah.
But you didn't expect him at that point. So the same thing with Penix. If you can get him later, it just, the whole draft is a crapshoot, right? Obviously, and I'll go back to another Hall of Famer. Tom Flores told me at the time, back in 1982, half the room was divided. Half the room wanted Barry Redden. The other half wanted the Heisman Trophy winner from USC, Marcus Allen. They got Al Davis on the phone because he was in court in L.A. trying to move the franchise. And thankfully for the franchise, the cooler heads and the smarter heads prevailed, and they drafted Marcus Allen. And the funny thing about that is you see the video when he gets drafted in his home. He's sitting on his couch. He throws a newspaper up, which kids today don't know. What's a newspaper? He throws the paper up and says, "I'm an Oakland Raider." He never played in Oakland because they moved to L.A.
Look at that. One more. Let's take a look at another graphic here. When it comes to Tom Telesco and we look at these picks overall and what the Raiders have here, these selections coming up, I told EA, Paul, before we sat down, it's 13, 44, and 77. Those are 3 valuable picks here. And then you hope something great could happen after round 6 there with the 6 and the 2 7s. But take me through your philosophy here with those first 3 picks up to 77.
If we're going chalk, then I'm going 13 with the guy that I took in our mock draft just because I want to be smart, right? So Talisa Fuaga is my guy at 13. Then I'm combining 44 and 77 to move back up.
Love that.
To get Penix late in the first round. I tried to do it in our mock draft with our Arizona guy, but he tried to fleece me, so I hung up on him. And he's a good friend of mine, too. I know you need a quarterback. Of course, everybody knows the Raiders want a quarterback. They're going to move up. So I'm giving you a second and a third. So if they can do that and then start packaging other things later on to move up, then you're hitting 2 important needs right there. Yeah. And I think that's what stands out is that would be a successful draft. Now, in reality, we know that you can't really grade a draft for 2 or 3 years.
No.
And the fact that Tom Telesco said, hey, I'm drafting for 4 or 5 years, that tells you the security that he feels that he's operating with. Antonio, he's going for it all because he said it himself on the record. Hey, I'm going to get fired from this job at some point. But if you're going to go down with your boots on.
That's right.
And Jaden's his guy that he could put those boots on for.
Yeah, you had similar kind of draft prospects today, too.
Yeah.
You know, get your guy and then come back up.
Yeah.
I think you had it reversed.
Yeah, I had Dick Fuaga at 13, then come in and get him. But as I said earlier, I think it's too risky to think that Penix is going to be there. I just think that Penix is going to be gone. I think he probably goes to 13 to the Raiders if he goes, and then after that, if other GMs see him available at 17 or 18 and those guys didn't get quarterbacks, they're going to want to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think when you start talking about, like you're saying, the draft, if he's not your guy right now, he's not going to turn out to be your guy. You know, if he's kind of on the edge and, you know, you kind of, you know, but when we go back to it, cornerback. I think when you start thinking about, you know,
Here we go.
When you start thinking about the ability to be, you have Jack on one side. You know, I think Nate is a really, really good inside guy. We just need that other piece that'll help Max. It'll help Malcolm Kuntz. It really would help this defense get another guy who can come in and step in right away. And I know we've had some issues with first-round cornerbacks not being able to translate that success from college to the pros. But, man, Mitchell from Toledo, I really like him. He had really solid Senior Bowl practices. It's not really the game.
Yeah.
It's really the practices. When these guys are going one-on-one and in the 7-on-7 drills, all word I've heard out of there that he was spectacular. He was heads and heels above everyone else.
And a big physical guy, too.
Yes.
And that's and fast.
Yeah.
And you know, as a burner. So I think the biggest concern there, I think, would be similar to the same concern that Mark Davis had over Max Crosby. Was he liked him, he liked his intangibles, he liked everything about him, but he worried about the competition he was facing in the MAC. This is kind of the same deal. You're playing for Toledo, but individual talent's always okay.
Let me be devil's advocate to that.
Yep.
All right, and that's one of the reasons we talked. All right, if I have a corner, similar measurables, and he plays for Alabama, and he's only facing a receiver who has 4 or 5 seconds, maybe twice a year, right? He's not really going through those adversity. If I have a guy at Toledo and my pressure up front is not very good and I'm playing each week, I'm in the cooker, right? Yeah. I'm the guy, but you know what? They're max protecting to try and get my guy open. I'm seeing that adversity each and every week. I'm prone to take the guy who's seen that adversity. That's not going to be, you know, bothered by the quarterback having 4 seconds to throw opposed to having to get the ball out in 2 seconds because everyone on my football team is, you know, a 5-star guy. So that's kind of my get back to that.
I think, JT, I think he just made me change my pick. I got to call Bristol now.
We're getting you a pick. We're not letting you out here without a pick on camera. But where would we be without Jack Jones? Where would the organization be? And then Amik's gone. Yeah. Good move for him to go to Detroit. And then Nate Hobbs. Again, I'm one of those guys. If Nate's so good inside, he should be able to play outside from time to time. Yeah. He should. He's supposed to be there, and there's not a lot of depth there. Right. So what concerns me about corner, if we're getting into the Raiders are getting into the 4th, the 6th round, and all of a sudden you're starting to take a corner there. Well, Jacorian Bennett was there, and he started. And what do you think of him overall? Why didn't he stick? They gave him a big opportunity through camp in the preseason to start. What happened?
The physicality of the game really got to him. The injuries, it just became so much for him that he just could not stay on the field. And if you're getting that baptism by fire, and again, I'll defer to what you're going to say, Eric, on it, but especially at cornerback, you're out there on an island. You have to have that short memory, but if you have nothing but bad memories, how do you recover from that? Yeah. You know, and a great guy, great kid. Talked to him numerous times. Stand-up guy, was always there in the locker room to talk about it. I liked his game. He was physical, and maybe coming back after that pressure cooker of a first season, that helps him elevate his game as well. It is a thin position group, but yeah, you also remember you got a guy that started a handful of games last year too, in Jacorian Bennett. That's going to help that position group.
Yeah, and I like Brandon. I think Faison didn't see him all last year, but the year before, he had some good games with us. And, you know, you're talking about, 4-1, what coverage are you on? Your man could come. I thought he had some really bright spots there. So he's a guy who can step in and fill in if we're not able to get
Paul
to the
makes a
corner.
good point. He played a lot last year, and a lot of people around here think like this year's his first year. I don't like when that happens. You could say the same thing about Tyree Wilson, right? He got drafted with an injury, then you see Ja'Cory, and then you look at this year's class, and you go back and look at those two players and say, really, this is going to be their breakout year, year two. Do you buy into that some guys come in with all this hype, then they get a nagging injury, then the second year we really get to see their upside?
It depends on the individual, right? For Tyree, I mean, there was no way he was supposed to play that much early on anyway, when we know what happened with the unfortunate situation with Chandler Jones, because he was supposed to be his mentor to bring him in and to get Tyree limited snaps and situational type pass rushing. Instead, he was thrown in the fire as soon as he could in training camp with those joint practices with the Rams. So he never had really a chance to kind of get ready for the NFL life. And that was one of the first things that we had asked Antonio Pierce was, what do you want to see from Tyree going forward? He said, well, we got to get his get off a little quicker because it took him a while as soon as the ball was snapped to stand up and get going. That's as simple as it can get for somebody like that. Now with less pressure on him and the physical attributes that he brings and the want and the knowledge that he's picking up from being next to or across from Max and being with Christian Wilkins, that's only going to help him. So, yeah, for him, I am anticipating, especially being healthy now, seeing him take that jump up to the next level.
We didn't want to change your mind in the last 20 minutes, but Paul Gutierrez, ESPN, you're on the clock. The Raiders select
Talisa Fuaga, right tackle, Oregon State. Simply for, I got to stick to my guns, right? I mean, you got to respect that. I hope.
That's Lincoln Kennedy.
I know.
Myself.
Him and Lincoln. Yeah.
We wrote a book. We wrote a book together.
Three of you guys.
Paul, you'll have a lot of coverage coming up tonight and tomorrow all weekend. We'll find it at ESPN.com.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You got it. Paul Gutierrez, everyone. When we come back, more of our draft coverage from headquarters here. It's a special edition of Raiders Roundtable brought to you by America First Credit Union.
Hey everybody, this is Nate Hobbs, and this is my draft story.
And he's brought down behind the 20. Nate Hobbs read it the whole way and chopped him down at the 18-yard line. Through the hands of the receiver, bobbled and picked off by Hobbs. Working across the field, 35, cuts up to the 30, and he's brought down at the Giants' 25-yard line.
Back my senior year, and it was the COVID year, and then I got hurt, only played in like 3-4 games, so my draft stock went way down, and I didn't have a really good year. My whole thing was to prove to everybody that, and myself, really honestly, I was the most important person that I could be in this league and playing this league. I didn't really care where I got drafted. At that point, it was just about proving it to myself and everybody who believed in me.
The 2021 NFL Draft is now officially open.
I had the peace of God over my life. I had peace beyond understanding because I knew I put in the necessary work and I built the mental fortitude to be okay with whatever happened. I knew I would get picked up, you know what I'm saying?
With the 167th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Nate Hobbs, defensive back, Illinois. Just win, baby.
Called me and asked me was I ready to be a Raider, and I couldn't believe it. I tried to, tighten up and be like, here's coach, blah, blah, blah. And shoot, began to shed a tear and hug my mama. It's my second or third birthday, and it's a picture of my mother kissing me on the cheek on like my third birthday. And back then she had to make the cakes herself, and I'm smiling. But I got on a Tim Brown jersey, and it was so crazy how it came full circle. That was my first jersey I ever had. Raiders 81 jersey, but it just felt like it was meant to be.
So let's start, man. Like, why the Raiders? Why at this point in your career, personally, professionally, like what made sense for you to be here in Vegas for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I would just say kind of just what I've seen, from this organization and just from this team, especially last year, kind of once Coach took over, you just seen the potential and just what's being built here. And, just the vibe, the mindset, all that stuff is just great and something that I want to be a part of. And, just you could kind of just feel the whole be yourself kind of mentality, and and I'm big on a lot of who I am and the person I am, the player I am, is accepted and encouraged here. So that's stuff that I can appreciate and want to be a part of, and just looking forward to just being part of the nation.
I'm glad you brought up the kind of ability, just like be yourself and be who you are. Because we were talking to Gardner earlier today, and he said the same thing, like just being in a place where you can be accepted for being you and not having to put on and pretend like I'm this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
Like at this point in your career, like how important was that for you to have a guy like AP to say, yo, do what you do, be who you are?
No, that's very important. And me and Gardner were kind of talking about it too. And we were just like looking at each other like Gardner's this now vet, rusty, like underdog, unsung, like, what I'm saying? And like, that's accepted here and just who he is and things like that. And just even for me, like obviously I'm me. Like I'm just personality, loose, like just all that stuff. So, as some people have seen and as Raider Nation will get to know more of me. But, it's great to just kind of, feel that from the top down of just being yourself, and and that's important because you can't be the best player you can be if you're trying to kind of trapped in a box or trying to kind of be conformed to one way. Like you got to be yourself, got to let that out, and that's how you get the best out of your players.
Welcome back, everyone. Raiders.com is your home for in-depth coverage and exclusive content surrounding the silver and black. Leading up to the draft, digital team reporter Levi Edwards recently took a look at the best NFL players selected with the number 13th pick overall. Christian Wilkins was selected at number 13 in 2019.
Right. Bob Lilly.
Yeah, it's a big list there. That's a good pick. That's a high pick. Welcome back, JT, along with Eric Allen. Thanks again to Paul Gutierrez. As we jump in here, 5 o'clock Pacific time, the draft will be started. The Raiders are picking at 13. That could obviously change if they're able to move up into the draft, and that, I think, is going to be the key. The reason I am so into this draft on top of our Raiders platforms is I think this is going to be brilliant television. Roger Goodell deserves a lot of credit of moving the first round to an exclusive night.
Yes.
Okay, we're not thinking second, third round till tomorrow, but to make it a made-for-television event and on all our platforms and to put this much hype behind it, everybody wants to make a big splash on TV at the draft. The rating's going to be enormous, and the phones are going to be ringing right out of the gate.
Right. This is another destination TV event
that
the NFL has created in the spring going to the summer. I mean, everybody wants to be a part of this thing somehow, some way, and it's very important that every organization is at the top of their game right now. I mean, this is – you're talking about personnel departments. This is the Super Bowl for personnel departments. You're going to look back in 2, 3, 4 years and say, hey, our team did a great job, and that's why we're in this position we're in right now. Right now, we're all trying to catch that train called the Kansas City Chiefs, and right now, everybody is at the forefront of their organizations as far as the personnel department, trying to make home runs, trying to make sure that we get some guys in here that energize the fan base, but more importantly, are guys who can step in this building and not just be great players on day one, but get better. Like Coach Antonio Pierce continues to talk about, is elevate your game every time you have the opportunity, particularly when you're in our building.
You saw Eddie Pascal sit down with Christian Wilkins when he was brought in. Wow, where did that come from? You want to talk about a Christmas present. That came out of nowhere. I watched Hard Knocks with the Dolphins in season. He was the star of that show.
Yes.
And he was their Max Crosby. Like, we have Max, and he's the guy that we see everywhere. Now we got him along with Max, and we got him before the draft and before the start of the season. That is a monumental move by Tom Telesco.
Right.
That's on the Tom Telesco resume before the 13th pick. What an addition overall. So you got Mad Max, Wilkins, Malcolm Kuntz, maybe the most improved player on the entire roster.
Yes.
And Tyree Wilson, as many have said, this is his rookie year coming up, his first real year coming up off the injuries. You look at that group, plus the depth that we have with Jenkins and Butler at defensive tackle, that is a much upgraded unit.
That is a win-win. When you talk about those 4 players right now going into next year, one of the best defensive lines in the National Football League, I do believe that Tyree will play a lot of, on third down, be inside. So now you have Wilkins inside, you have Tyree inside. Who are you going to double? And I think Tyree at this point is going to get tremendously better throughout this offseason. And then when he approaches the season, he's going to be the type of guy on third down and pass situations. He's going to be in the mix to really get the pressure on that quarterback from up in the middle to force you where? Outside, to where Kuntz has really taken off the last 7-8 weeks of the season. And we all know Defensive Player of the Year caliber Max Crosby is going to continue to get it done. When we talk about the strengths of this football team, it is the defensive line and it's that wide receiver on offense. Those are the strengths of this football team. And if I can go into a season saying the strength of my team, one of them, defensive front, man, we're halfway there. Now all we have to do is make sure on the back end we have some guys who can catch the football, and we're going to be okay on defense. I love the aspect of Tom Telesco going out and getting Wilkins early, set him aside along with Max Crosby and Kuntz.
How about Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator?
Oh, yeah.
How about the fact that he, with Antonio getting the job and leapfrogging him to head coach, he was humble, stayed in that position, and did a masterful job. And I will predict he will be a head coach in the next cycle or two, no doubt about it.
Yes.
Patrick Graham, Raiders are very fortunate to have him here. But here's some of the prospects that are available here. And it doesn't seem Byron Murphy was a name that you've been hearing overall, which would be just an elite addition to the Raiders on the inside. If you had Wilkins along with Byron Murphy, but he'll be gone by then. But as we take a look later on in the draft here when it comes to defensive linemen, I think we're good. I think we're good where it's not going to be an early priority, but you don't know. Eric Allen, maybe in the fourth round. You go later in the draft and you see some defensive tackle that dropped you had a second-round grade on him, and he's still available later in the draft. You go get him.
Yeah, I know early in the season it was difficult getting consistent pressure up front. It was like, do we sacrifice the pass rush for, the defensive tackle being able to stop the run? Early on, it was kind of an issue, and it basically wasn't really able to get that edge guy away from Max, the ability to be consistent. So there was just a lot of inconsistencies, right? But once Antonio took over, I just thought everyone's flow was so much better, and they felt at ease doing what they were trying to do and accomplish as an individual player. Kuntz got a lot better. They kind of found out what he was good at and allowed him to do those things. And the breakdown of what you're trying to do as a defensive lineman, I kind of read through it. One of the coaches, was gracious enough to kind of, let me see what was going on. Just a great game plan each and every week. And I thought you saw that at each level. Spillane got significantly better. The back end, getting those interceptions, turnovers for touchdowns, those things. So whoever comes in here, if they do at the defensive line, they're going to get much better, right, than where they were in college. I just don't think we need that right now. There's other questions depth-wise on our defense.
You look at Tyree Wilson, he's got to have a breakout year. He has to. He was drafted really high. He's got to be an elite player. He was drafted to be a perennial Pro Bowler. But I had a former GM tell me about Malcolm Kuntz. Listen to this. He said, if the Raiders want to trade up as drastically as they want to get the quarterback, they're going to be asking for Malcolm Kuntz. The other team on the other end of the phone is going to ask for those 3 first-rounders, and they're going to ask. I was in shock when I heard that. I said, why do you think that? He goes, because he's the guy that jumps off the tape when you're not looking at Max. So there's a player out there that the rest of the league thinks highly of. If these two players, Tyree and Malcolm Kuntz, have breakout years, and you can say Malcolm had it last year, but he has a much higher ceiling this year with the scheme, second year in the scheme. That Raider front is going to be incredible, and that's going to change games for this team.
Yeah, you're right, and I'm not surprised that your friend said that. I watched him for the last 7-8 weeks of the season, and although at this point, he has you as a defensive guy, you want to have like 2 or 3 moves. Right now, his speed and his ghost move, which he kind of dips that shoulder, he has really great bend. It's hard to teach that bend. And this coaching staff found that and said, this is what you need to do. You need to set guys up and then get to the edge, get that dip, and you'll be by him. That's been great. He's going to get better. And I understand why people, when they watch this tape, if you're not looking at 99, and he's always on the football field, it's not like he's taking plays off. And that's another thing. When you have someone like Max and you have younger players, What are you like sitting on the sideline when Max is playing 98% of the snaps? So you know you're going to get on the football field and you want to play and you want to contribute to this football team. And I think that's the energy that this defense is going to play with from now on.
You know, Antonio Pierce can motivate, obviously teach. Here's what our own James Jones thinks about AP.
Oh, I think he's going to be huge. And the main thing you start with is the motivation part. It's not a lot of coaches that are able to motivate men to be able to go out here and play at a high level. And men don't necessarily respond to certain coaches certain type ways. I play with a lot of coaches, and you respond to coaches different. Antonio Pierce has a special knack of getting these players to respond. I don't know if it's the respect factor that he played. I don't know if it's the respect factor of how he coaches certain things, but they absolutely love to play for him. They respect him. They respect what he says. And that is the start of it. And once that happens, you are going to believe whatever your coach is telling you. And I think that's what we seen last year, right? With Antonio Pierce, these dudes stepped on the field. If Antonio Pierce said we finna go shut the Chiefs out, they ain't going to score on offense, them boys believe that. And they went out there and delivered. And he's been doing this since high school. He did it at Poly. He did it at Arizona State, and he's doing it now in the National Football League. He just has a knack to motivate people, to teach people, to have players in the right situation, and that's what he's doing with this defense and this team.
He nailed it. He nailed it with motivation there. Now I want to take a look at the Raiders' last 3 drafts in Las Vegas, and there's been some criticism, some big picks that were missed, but overall, look at the starters here and the impact guys. We'll go back to 2021. Trayvon Merrick, I thought it was a do-or-die year for him last year, and he proved it.
He did.
And he proved that he is a starting safety on this team. Yep. We mentioned Malcolm Kuntz, Nate Hobbs. Let's stop for a second and talk about him. Right. He has to have a better year next year. He's been banged up. He's had nagging injuries the last couple of years. He mentioned COVID in the years before that. We're counting on him. That guy's got to stay on the field in the slot because he's a ball hawk and he puts his hands on people and he's very physical.
You see that 5th round right there? Mm-hmm. No one expected Nate Hobbs to be a pivotal part of any football team at this point in his career, and he has been. He's carved out himself a spot inside at that nickel spot, and people are like, oh, man, he's a corner. Well, Nate is in a situation where when you're playing inside, you almost have to have a mindset of a linebacker. And when you watch him, he does an incredible job of sealing the edge, which is so important in our league, forcing things back up in the middle to all your tackling guys. He's out there on the edge at times in the box, taking on tight ends, taking on pulling guards, pulling tackles, does a phenomenal job of really sealing the edge, which is incredibly important for a defense. Now, when you're talking about coverage on the outside, I'm not sure if he's polished enough to play consistently on the outside just because of how his skill set is. He's a bigger guy. He's not the kind of guy who's great in the hips. He's manageable outside. I love him inside. That means when you're facing these football teams with 11 personnel that only has a 1 running back, 1 tight end, he's able to really keep you in the mix. No one's going to guard Kelsey one-on-one. No one's going to do that, right? But everybody else, he has a really good opportunity to match up with the bigger guy because of his physical skills.
And how about Zamir White, who was on that list? Zeus.
Yes.
You see him doing curls in the offseason? You see what he looks like. All right, coming up next, Deshaun Reed from The Athletic will join us in studio here. We're having a great time today. Hopefully you have a great night, Raider Nation, as we continue on all the platforms, brought to you by America First Credit Union.
When the Raiders drafted me, hey, my whole goal of my life came true. I go to the Senior Bowl, opening kickoff. I'm running down the field. I go right into the wedge. The guy sticks up his elbow, this big guy. Bam, right in my eye. I couldn't see. I'm like, oh man. I get up, come to the sideline, and he goes, hey, Phil, we got no backups. I said, don't worry about me. I can play. I went wacky that day, and I made all these tackles. Al Davis, he met me after the game. He waited for me, and he came up to me and said, nice game, Filippiano. And I never could forget that voice or that smile or his hair. It was pretty cool, but I think he liked because I got the black eye. I looked like the Raider with the patch. And then came draft day. I invited all my buddies to come to my place. I bought the beer, I bought the subs, I bought everything. It started like 9 o'clock in the morning. By noon, I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's break out the beer. My mother called like 3 times. Philip, are you going to call us or whatever? I said, Mom, I'm waiting on the call. Stop calling me. It was about 7 o'clock. Phone rings, and I get on the phone with Ron Wolf, and I said, Ron, can I ask you a question? What round? He goes, oh, second. And I said, what took so long? He goes, well, back in those days, there was no rules about half hour or 15 minutes and all that stuff. They just took as long as they wanted to take. So when they said second round, Oakland Raiders, wow, that was beautiful. I had seen the Raiders play. I loved the way they played. I loved their colors. But to get drafted there, never even thought about it. It ended up perfect.
You know, I think what's exciting too, and we certainly saw it at the end of last year, right? Once AP kind of, you know, came into the big chair, but like the strength of this team in 2023, and I think the expected strength of the team going into 2024 is going to be that defense. For a dude like you who's going to make his money getting after the quarterback, being disruptive, like, is that fun and exciting that, like, hey, we're kind of the identity of what we want to be in 2024?
No, it's definitely fun. All the time in our room, we talk about us being like the motor of the team, like not just the defense, but the team in general. So it's always great that like we feel like we have it on our shoulders and stuff like that, and we can change the outcome of how things go. So,
you know, going back to 23 for a second though, Malcolm, you look at the numbers and career year and pretty much every metric you want to look at, the 8 sacks, the whole deal. What worked last year for you?
I pretty much just think what worked last year was just trust myself and just taking it one step at a time, one game at a time, not like looking big picture or caring about this or that. So just staying to myself. I think that's what really helped.
You know, we talk about the 8 sacks, and obviously that's the number that everyone focuses on, right? That's what everyone loves to see. That's the one that gets you on SportsCenter and ESPN, NFL Network, all that places. But, like, are you, when you're in the middle of it, right, when it's week 13, let's say, like, are you kind of aware of the production, or is that something that you kind of look back on at the end of the year and be like, oh, okay, man, like the numbers really were kind of added up for me in a positive way?
Well, the beginning of the year, I kind of had a whole bunch of like missed sacks, so I kind of got in the mindset of just like don't think about it, just rush to try to play as good as I can. So then when the sacks finally started to come, I kind of was already in like the habit of like just not even focusing on it. So as the stats kind of like stacked up and stuff like that, I didn't realize until after the season, like, oh, I actually did something really good. So.
Welcome back to Raiders Roundtable. There it is again, the Raiders draft hat designed to welcome the team's newest members. The Always a Raider 2024 draft cap is available now, featuring a Ray Shield logo over a stylish crown. And once a Raider, always a Raider embroidery on the side. You can get yours today at RaiderImage.com. Back with EA and Deshaun Reed, kind enough to join us from The Athletic. Welcome in. Good to see you, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Excited for it. Draft day.
I love your work, and I read it every day to prepare for my shows. And as we look at the draft now, it seems like we're an hour and a half, 2 hours away from maybe a big swing coming out of this building. How do you project what it will cost if the Raiders want Jaden Daniels and they have to get up to 2 or 3?
I think it'll take a king's ransom. I think 2 is probably not going to be possible. It sounds like the Washington Commanders are set on staying there and picking a quarterback. The Patriots at 3, I think it depends. You know, we know who's going number 1, Caleb Williams, but depending on what the Commanders do at 2, the Patriots might be willing to move at 3. It'd be tough to get them to move because they're also a team that needs a quarterback. I know they have Jacoby Brissett on the roster, but they don't have that long-term answer yet. And so it's going to take a lot, to get them to move off that spot. And there's some other teams out there that need quarterbacks as well. I mean, you look at the Vikings, look in the AFC West at the Broncos, even the Giants perhaps. And so you're going to have some competition there if you want to get to number 3.
Yeah, let's stay in that quarterback area there. Talk to us a little bit about, after Caleb's gone, like how do you grade those, 2 through 6 guys?
I like Jaden Daniels. I mean, I think that dual threat ability is something that teams have seen as increasingly important the last few years. I mean, you see not even just like Lamar Jackson types, but just Patrick Mahomes. You saw the running around he did in the Super Bowl. And so if you have a guy that when things break down and he needs to get out of structure, I mean, Jaden Daniels was running away from guys in the SEC. You know, those are the best athletes in college football, and he was running all over them at times. And he's also a talented thrower. You know, he doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but he has a good enough arm to make all the throws that you want to see. He's an experienced quarterback. He had a long college career. He's one of those guys that had that extra COVID year, and it benefited him greatly. I know he's a little bit slim, and some people wonder if he can, you know, take some of those hits at the next level, but I think he has everything you want in that modern-day quarterback, and obviously he has some ties to, you know, the Raiders head coach here, Antonio Pierce, and so that would be my guy. But I also think, you know, Drake May from North Carolina, he's one of those prototypical build type of guys, you know, 6'4", 230, has an incredible arm. He's kind of similar in terms of his mold to Justin Herbert. I'm not saying that he was the same caliber of player in college, but he has a lot of those traits that you look for, and I think he's another guy that, you know, could be a high upside starter in the future.
Yeah, I think Jaden Daniels, the connection to Antonio Pierce is something we've all been talking about. I like what he said. If the Commanders played games with him on that visit at Topgolf, as we talked about with the other ones, and he doesn't feel right or they don't feel right, they feel like they kind of gave him a bad rap at that, and he's available at number 3. I think the Raiders really got to burn up the phone lines to make it happen. Is there a chance they could trade up for another quarterback and we're all missing out? Everybody in Raider Nation is going, it's got to be Jaden Daniels. Well, what happens if Drake May drops to number 4 or someone's there? Or JJ McCarthy, do you think he could be a fit?
I think Drake May I would do it for. JJ McCarthy, I'm not quite buying it.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's a similar type of build, you know, as May, but he just didn't have the production in college. And you know, Michigan, you know, they didn't need him to, you know, to win a national championship with the way they're running the ball and playing defense. But we just haven't seen it at the same level. Him being asked to deliver in those big moments that you need a quarterback to be able to. And so I'm not saying he has no shot of turning out to be a starter, but when you're talking a top 5 pick, I think I need a guy that, like, I've seen him do it. And I just haven't seen that out of McCarthy.
Yeah, that's interesting. And now that Denver, right, has gotten Zach Wilson, and do you think they still could pick a quarterback, or you think they're out of the quarterback race and that's someone who can kind of come up and get their draft picks?
Oh, no, I think they'll still be in it if there's a guy there that makes sense for them. I think between Stidham and Wilson, you know, they have some depth in the room, but I don't think they have that clear answer. You know, it's kind of, you know, not too different from the Raiders. I mean, you have Minshew and O'Connell, 2 guys that have starting caliber experience, but that obviously doesn't take them out of the mix for the quarterback position. And I think that's the same way for the Broncos. I have heard they're not as desperate maybe as we may think to get a guy this year. Sean Payton, I think, has a lot of job security there. Yes. And so if it's not a guy that they're 100% sold on, you're not just going to take a quarterback just to do it. And so they're interested in the team, and it'll kind of depend on how the board falls.
What's your reporting on this relationship with Telesco and Antonio Pierce, how it comes in? It's very unique. They didn't meet until he walked into the lobby. Now you got normally a GM that gets hired before a coach. The coach goes from interim to head coach. Walk me through that puzzle and the pieces, how it came together, and what have you seen?
Yeah, sort of an arranged marriage. You know, I think it was a unique situation where the Raiders started off interviewing GM candidates first. We didn't see those head coaching interviews start to happen until I believe it was just the second week. And Antonio Pierce ended up being hired before the GM. And that's something that it happens before, but it usually goes the other way around when you're starting from scratch. And so, you know, I'm sure he had a level of input, you know, and what decision was made from there and finding the best fit for him. And, you know, while AP took over as interim coach and he got experience last season, there's still a lot of firsts that he's experiencing. You know, his first combine as a head coach, this draft process, OTAs, when those get started. And so having somebody like Tom Telesco who has, you know, 11 years of GM experience, and not just that experience, but he's been an executive in the NFL since the 1990s. So he's seen it all and done it all. And a lot of things that AP hasn't experienced yet, he can help him through those stages. And obviously he's not a coach, so there's certain things that he, you know, and that's why he brought in some of the former head coaches on his staff, like a Marvin Lewis, to help with some of those more integral details. But I think when you have somebody as experienced as Telesco in the front office, that really helps balance out things with AP. In terms of, you know, demeanor, they're very different.
Yeah.
AP is very boisterous and direct and loud, while Telesco is more reserved, I guess we should say. And so, but, you know, that doesn't stop them, obviously, from producing some good results.
Let's take a look at some of these Telesco picks and what jumps out at you, especially, I thought he was brought in because of his veteran GM experience, and especially the first round, where the Raiders really have to hit on the first round this year.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway is he tends to kill it in the first round, and that's something that the Raiders, you know, have struggled to do the last few years now. I mean, just looking at their current roster, I mean, Justin Herbert, Rashawn Slater, he was a guy that I believe was All-Pro right away as a rookie. And so they have guys that didn't just become good players, but like pretty much from the jump were good players. And that's what you want. That's the ideal situation, obviously, for those first-round picks. And, you know, I think what they're picking now at 13 is not the highest pick in the world, but it's still, you know, a position where you should be able to get a player that can come in from day one and make a big impact. And so, you know, his track record shows that he's been capable of being successful in that position. And so we'll see how he does tonight.
Yeah. Does that history of those picks fit like the mold of what Antonio Pierce is trying to build here? Like, so you can have a great player and he could be a receiver and you can go out and your evaluation process is that. But if you're not trying to fill a spot for Antonio Pierce's vision of his team, how do those things kind of marry each other?
Yeah, I think when you look at the positions that Telesco has valued, it's been those premium positions, you know, quarterback, edge rusher, cornerback, offensive tackle. And so, I mean, if you're building a team, you got to have those positions, right? So you would think that would align. And so, and I think where they're set to pick tonight, there's going to be some interesting prospects at least three of those positions at quarterback, offensive tackle, and cornerback. And, you know, given Telesco's track record, he seems to be pretty good at picking those guys. You know, again, not just from his time as Chargers GM, but some of the guys he helped pick earlier in his career, like with the Colts, obviously, with, you know, a guy named Peyton Manning. And so, you know, he's done it before, so we'll see how it goes tonight.
It was a few short years ago. It was Derek Carr, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller. It changes really quickly. Now with the two quarterbacks here in Aiden and obviously Gardner Minshew brought in, you got Devontae, Trey Tucker. Michael Mayer's got to have a big breakout year. And then Jacoby Myers is one hell of a player. So do you think that the Raiders later in this draft are going to look for another playmaker, or the hole's too big at corner and offensive line that they'll even draft more of those players for depth later on?
I think later on it would be surprising if they didn't take at least one receiver. Okay. I think you look at their group now and you feel really good about that top three. Obviously with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, but even Trey Tucker, he started to come on strong towards the end of last season. But they don't really have a lot of depth beyond that, and obviously you can't make it through a whole season with only three receivers that you feel like you can depend on the roster. Obviously, some guys can get better that maybe haven't produced in the past, but I would think they bring in at least one receiver, and you could see that maybe towards the end of day two, but at least on day three before they wrap things up.
Yeah, where do you rank our receiving core? Because I hear all kind of, you know, question. Hey, they're 1 or 2 or, you know, 7 or 8. Where do you, like in the league right now, where would you rank our receiving core?
Yeah, I think nowadays with as much as the tight ends are being used in the passing game, you kind of have to group them together when you talk about receiving cores now. Right. Say somewhere around the 10th spot probably, I think, because of that depth element. I think that is really important nowadays. And obviously they have super high-end talent in Devontae Adams, but outside of that it's a mix of some younger guys like a Trey Tucker, like a Michael Mayer that have a lot of potential but haven't necessarily put it all together on the field yet. And so if those guys take that big, you know, year 2 leap, which is typically when players make their biggest jump in the NFL, then that ranking could change, obviously, by the end of the year. So we'll have to see a little bit.
What do you think of Luke Getsy and the decision with Cliff Kingsbury? He comes here, what he did at Chicago, what we saw with his style of wanting to ground and pound with Antonio Pierce. Tell us a little bit behind the scenes at The Athletic, what you think about him as the OC.
Yeah, and so I think that was a situation that kind of speaks again to something that AP had to deal with for the first time, is building out his coaching staff. And there's a little bit of recruiting that goes on with that, right? And things can come together and you think they're done and fall apart the next day, you know, and that's what happened in that situation. But obviously they interviewed several candidates, so they had, you know, other ones that they liked and had a backup plan. And I think with Luke Getsy, the thing that you look with there is he comes from a system that's been really dominant in the league with that Shanahan tree. You know, he worked under Matt LaFleur with the Packers for a few years, and also you know, with their previous coach as well. And so he's kind of a blend of a couple of different systems, but they've gone on to be successful in the league. And obviously the Bears the last couple of years didn't have a lot of offensive success, and so it becomes a question of, you know, was that because of the offensive play calling? Was it because of the quarterback? Offensive line, weapons? The answer was a mix of everything, obviously. And so Getsy has to be a lot better in this role than he's been in the past for it to end up working out, as really regardless of who the quarterback is, whether it's somebody that they take in this draft or the guys are already on the roster, like he has to be much better for this offense to take a step forward.
Yeah, I tell you what, the last 5-6 weeks of the season, I thought Coach Graham did just a great job, just energy and the teaching. What was your vision of what Patrick Graham was able to do at the end of the season, and then what do you think he wants to do going into the draft?
I thought it was pretty incredible. I mean, his first year on the job, and really for the whole team, it was a rough year, but for the defense as well. And last season didn't start very well at all for the defense. And then suddenly, just halfway through the season, it seemed like something clicked, and that showed his ability to adjust. It wasn't like they went out and made, a major acquisition. Obviously, they picked up Jack Jones, and that was a huge move, of course, that changed their cornerback room. But it was a lot of the same guys out there. But I think that shows his ability to adjust schematically and, rally the unit. And obviously, Antonio Pierce had a hand in that as well as the head coach. But, he kind of just let Graham loose, let him do what he does. And, that unit, by the end of the season, I mean, top 5 defense in the league. You saw what they did to the Chiefs on Christmas Day. And, obviously every year is different, and you got to make some improvements to the roster to keep that going. But I think you have to be optimistic about the defense this year, which is probably the first time you can say that in a while.
We're going to take a look at the 8 picks that the Raiders have here. I wanted to ask you, Deshaun, what do you think needs to happen for this to be an exceptional draft? Not an average draft. We've seen a few of those here in Vegas so far. We've had guests that say package the second and third to get back into the first round. Is there anything you see with the amount of picks and where they are that the Raiders can really make a big move here?
Yes, I mean, they have 8 picks, but a lot of those picks are later in the draft.
Yes.
They only have 3 in the top 100, which is usually the range where you find, those impact players. Not to say that you can't in later rounds. Obviously, Max Crosby is a guy that got picked past that range, and he's pretty good. But I think for this draft, coming out of it, just taking a realistic approach, I think it's a home run draft if you come away with a starting caliber offensive tackle and a starting caliber cornerback. I know people are looking at quarterback, and I understand why they're so obsessed with that position, but I think what the Raiders have done this offseason, they put themselves in a spot where they don't necessarily have to come away with the guy of the future this year. That would be nice. It'd be great if they could do that and go up and get Jaden Daniels at number 3. I'm sure they'd be popping in fireworks, but that just doesn't seem to be very realistic. So with where they are now, if you get a starting right tackle and a starting cornerback, that's great to me.
You guys are crushing me. You guys are crushing me.
He's the voice of reason.
I know.
He's the voice of reason. He covers this team as good as anybody. He's the voice of reason.
That's right.
We want to wrap it up with you putting your name on it. The 13th pick, the Las Vegas Raiders. Who do they select?
Obviously, it depends a lot on what happens with those first 12. But if he's there, I would take Quinyon Mitchell, a cornerback from Toledo. I think he has everything you need and want. I mean, with the size, the length, the speed. He had ball production in college, not the most interceptions, but a ton of pass deflections. And then outside of making plays on the ball, he was just consistent on a play-by-play basis and showed that he could excel both in man and zone coverages. And I think he's a guy that you pair him with Jack Jones and Nate Hobbs at that nickelback position, and you don't got to worry about cornerback for a while. So that'll be my pick.
What's your next 48 hours, next couple of days look like? What will you be doing? Where will we find all your content? That's going to be a busy run for you.
I'll be downstairs a lot the next few days, but just come over to The Athletic. We'll have a lot of instant analysis, but also some big picture columns and stories kind of breaking down what this means for the Raiders moving forward. And so starting today, running all the way through Sunday, pretty much even after the draft, with the undrafted free agent market, we'll be rolling and keeping you guys plugged in.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Sean Reed of The Athletic. Fantastic hit here. As we get you closer, as the clock is ticking down here on our pre-draft coverage here, it's Raiders Roundtable brought to you by America First Credit Union.
Tim Brown, Heisman Trophy winner in '87 at Notre Dame.
To be drafted by the Raiders, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I was in my little apartment in South Bend. That was before they started bringing guys to New York. It was Ron Wolf who called me, and I remember him saying, "Do you want to be a Raider?" And I started screaming like a little girl. It was on TV. I got the call right before the Raiders picked, and so I got to hear them say Tim Brown. It was quite different than today. So much fanfare that goes along with the draft, but not so much back then. So it was a phone call. They made the announcement, and then the next team was on the clock. I told my agent, "Look, man, I didn't know if I could come in and learn the receiver position that quick to be able to make a difference." We got to the Raiders. We said, okay, James Lofton, Mervin Fernandez, Marcus Allen, Bo Jackson, Todd Christensen. If we can get here, they're obviously not going to need me day one, and that'll give me a chance to learn this position and be ready to play. You literally almost have to pinch yourself sometimes. To be in the locker room with Howie Long, with Todd, and with Marcus, it was really a little freaky because you watch these guys for years play at such a high level, and all of a sudden you're there in the locker room, and guess what? They're expecting you to meet that or better it. And even though I didn't feel a lot of pressure at the same time, I wanted to get better. I'm forever grateful for the Raiders organization and certainly for Mr. Davis for giving me a shot to be a Raider.
Hi, I'm Charles Woodson. Woodson! This is my draft story.
It's selection day in the National Football League.
Intercepted by Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson took it away, and there he goes down the sideline. He's gonna go. Polish off the Heisman.
It's blast-off time for the class of 1998.
Like all of us as young players, man, we dream about going to the draft, dream about getting drafted. And of course, you want to get drafted high.
We are eagerly anticipating the start of what may go down in history when we look back 10 years from now as the high watermark draft of the entire decade of the 90s.
Going up into the draft, there was talks about me going forward overall to the Raiders. But then there was all of a sudden there was some chatter about somebody moving up into the 4th pick.
It's always interesting when the Raiders are on the clock with it. We understand the pick is coming right in. They got to go with Woodson. I mean, now all of a sudden corner, which is such a strength position for them for years and years and years.
Then there was a little bit of anxiety, if you will, about whether or not I was going to get picked 4th or not.
Let's go up to the podium and Commissioner Paul Tagliabue. With the 4th pick in the draft.
And then the time came and the Raiders actually made the call and said, Charles, we're taking you at number 4.
The Oakland Raiders have selected defensive back, University of Michigan, Charles Woodson.
Man, I had, my family, man, my mom, my brother, my sister, nephew, dad. Of course, there was, hugs, going around just like you see, every year. Big time hugs and congratulations and tears of joy.
It's the only pick that I think the Raiders could have made.
That moment right there, knowing that I had made it and gotten my opportunity to play in the NFL was an incredible moment, man, and one that I'll never forget.
So we welcome in the 4th pick of the 1998 draft, Charles Woodson.
Long time ago, man.
Long time ago. Take us back to that day, the whole experience from the Heisman, going for the Raiders. What was that day like for you?
Yeah, man. To be honest, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I always tell people, you're told that you're going to be a high pick. You feel like you worked your way up to be a high pick, but then there's always swirlings, surrounding the draft. Like this team's going to move up, and then if this team moves up, they're going to take this person. And if that happens in the draft, you never know how far you might fall. You know what I'm saying? But I knew that, the Raiders were interested. I ran a fast enough 40 time for Al.
That's important. That's important.
Right. Ran a fast enough 40 times. So I was confident, but to a degree, that I would go early. But then draft day, you have your families around, my mom, my dad, brothers, sister, and it's a big deal, because it's something that you've really worked towards, trying to make your way, to the NFL. You see me, hugging my mom there. But then how I think the rounds or the picks were 15 minutes back then. And it seems like the teams really took the whole 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there after the 3rd pick, and I'm like, man, when you going to make this pick? But to hear your name called, that you're going to, have that opportunity to play in the NFL, and then a team like the Raiders or the team that did it, with such a rich tradition. I always tell people that I didn't really know a whole lot about the Raiders until I got there. But, of course, I saw them from afar. And so it was just, it's hard to kind of describe your feelings and your thoughts at that time. But I just knew that I made it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, I couldn't wait to get into the NFL.
Yeah. 2 things. One is on my free agency I was forcing my way out of one team, and I was, flying around to different teams answering calls. And so, Willie Shaw, our defensive back coach, calls me and says, hey, come out and take a trip. And I was like, man, I'm not coming out there, man. I was on a bad team and we beat you guys, bro. Right. Come on, man. I'm not coming out there.
I'm not going for one. No.
It was the end of my, I'm in year 10. I'm trying to get to the championships and stuff. So I fly out, just because of him. And you guys all heard the story. So I come into the facility, and I'm talking to this young dude. We're going back and forth at it with Philadelphia. And he's like, man, you don't know. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I was played there, right? So I go upstairs, talk to Mr. Davis, and I don't think I'm going to be there. Right, so I'm just asking him all kind of stuff. Who you guys drafting? I mean, what's going on? What happened with Marcus Allen? He's like, slow down, 21. So we're going back and forth. But the one thing they did say is, we're going to draft that kid from Michigan. We're going to draft him. So I'm like, Michigan? You mean the Heisman Trophy dude? And they're like, yeah. I was like, what position he's going to play? Playing kickoff returner. What is it? And so they have me go into the coach's office. Yeah. And so I go in, I'm talking to Gruden, and Gruden was that guy I was talking to when I first got there. He looked like he was 20-something years old. I thought he was like a coach.
A baby,
But he did emphasize, like, I want somebody to really represent this brand at corner. And we have a tradition of having, like an older vet guy. But, man, we just think this kid from Michigan, we think he is just going to be a phenomenal player. And teamed up with you, I think you guys can just really hit it off. So I was like, yeah, man, I really like this dude. So I go home, I, check him out on, I'm like, dang, this dude is nice, right? So the next thing is because I was talking with him, he signs Anthony Newman. Anthony Newman calls me from Oakland. I'm at home in San Diego. He calls me, he's like, hey, man, guess what? Guess where I am? I'm like, where you at? He's like, I'm in Oakland. I'm like, oh, my goodness.
No.
Gruden is on his business. He's saying
he's trying to put it together.
He's trying to put it together, right? Yeah. So I immediately called my agent, like, dude, I'm going to be there. And then to see you get drafted and the emotion, man, it's just like it really tells you a lot about what this organization is all about, man. And he has done an amazing job.
I never heard that story.
Yeah,
I never heard that story. The funny thing is that, you were like, 21. My first thought was because, you couldn't wear single digits. I was going to wear 21. Like, I wanted 21 when I got, to the Raiders. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, EA comes. I'm like, damn, he took 21. So at that point, I don't know which number I'm going to get. And so 24 was available. Yeah. And then, like, 39 or something crazy.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there like, I don't know which number. I don't know Willie Brown. I don't know really the history of Willie Brown. I don't know it. So I'm not like thinking, I want 24 because I'm like, man, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Brown was like, no, you're going to wear 24. And I was like,
yes, sir.
Well, I guess I'll put on 24.
Yeah.
And then I really find out,
right,
who Willie Brown is. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
Got to ask you watch a lot of games with Mark Davis in the box, and you watch the evolution of this defense last year. It looks like the Raiders need a corner in this draft. If they don't get it early, maybe second, third round. What are you thinking overall about this defense and how it evolved last year as you were looking down from the owner's box, watching Max? Now there's Christian Wilkins coming in. Overall, were you pretty impressed?
I was impressed, but really impressed with how Kuntz, the other edge rusher, on how he came along late in the season. It seems like once Antonio took over, then all of a sudden that's when Kuntz started showing up. So you could tell that the coach saw something in him before he took over that said, hey, man, we got to put this guy in a position to make some plays. And so those guys, him and Max across from each other, really started making some plays. But, we just didn't really have, to me, the draft before, they had the kid that went to the Eagles. I'm like, man, if we can get that guy in that middle of that defense, man. But when they say they're going to get Christian Wilkins, I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good. Because you need that interior rush. A guy that can rush the passer from the middle of the field. And then it helps out Max, of course, on the other end. And then also, getting the young kid over from the Patriots, help me out.
Jack Jones.
Getting Jack Jones, who is a
ball hawk.
He's a ball hawk.
Yeah.
He's a player. It's one of those things that you feel like you've really missed, in our secondary over the years. It's somebody that'll just go make a play.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it ain't gonna always be the right thing, but if you'll just go make a play and not worry about, the consequences of if I don't make go make the play. Having that gives your rushers up front confidence that, hey man, we got some guys in here that if I get to the quarterback and that ball comes out, that guy in the back end, he'll take advantage of that. So for us, JT, if we are to get another corner, then of course you want somebody that has that same mentality, because you need those guys sprinkled around your secondary, because those where the big plays happen. And not only that, getting the ball in your hands and wanting to get into the end zone. There's a mentality back there, man. It ain't just knocking the ball. Yeah, it ain't just knocking the ball down and pass PBUs. We don't want PBUs. We want picks and INTs for touchdowns.
That being said, let's take some time to look at this video of you in the locker room after this epic win for the Raiders last year.
We've been talking about it for a while. Captains, everybody hit on this week, man. We talked about team. We talked about doing it for one another, playing for one another, playing the game the right way. Passion, accountability, having fun. Tom hit on it. Probably best anybody's ever hit on it before. Trust. Trust. Trust in one another, man. Trust in the coaches, trust in each other, trust in yourself, trust in the process, and believing. We didn't get into the P word, but it's there. Just remember what Max, you said and I said. The lasting impression. How did we end that game? Victory formation. This is what we said we wanted to do. You guys said you wanted to do. You did it. We did it. Let's enjoy it. There's no need to rush out of here tonight. There ain't no need to rush out of here tonight. All right, we good. We can take time. 7 o'clock. We got to push it back. 8 o'clock tomorrow will be 8 o'clock. Make sure we take care of each other tonight. Love each other tonight. Love one another, man. And just remember this moment. And we'll get it again. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah, we'll get it again. We'll run it back.
A few Hall of Famers there, Charles. What did that mean to you, that celebration?
Man, you know how it is, man, being in the locker room. You know how it is going to the locker room after a loss. You know how it is going to the locker room, after a win. And, for those guys to go out there and perform that late in the season the way that they did, in an effort, I feel like, to keep their coach, like that was a big deal. And so you could really feel the energy in that room, and you could feel the love that they have for Antonio Pierce. So I think that's why so many, of us former guys, kind of advocated, hey, man, I think he needs to be the guy. But to be in there and to share that, and Max is a bad influence. He came over there and gave me a cigar. Come on, Max. What are you doing, Max?
Yeah.
It was great. It was great for me to be in there and to be around it. And because I love the game, and I love when I see people or players, playing hard and giving it all they got. And those guys did that, man. So it was great to be in there, and having Marcus and a few other guys in there, man. It was special.
EA, wrap this up with this brand, because he's got meetings. We could do this for an hour. They're rolling him from meeting to meeting. We're fortunate to get him. Hit on that.
Yeah, fortunate to have you in here, Wood, and you're one of the greatest football players to ever play our game. Right? I'm not talking about position-wise, but just all over. Just drop you in the football field in any area, you can get it done. And talk to us a little bit about this whiskey and how you've been able to translate your performance on the football field to after the football. Yeah,
nothing really changes. At the base of everything you do is hard work, and so, in business, it's no different. Mm-hmm. Just meeting with the Raiders and the partnership team, everyone knows that, we're an official whiskey of the Las Vegas Raiders. But from both sides, you meet and try to figure out, how you can make it better. Like that's part of the business, that you get into. And so, the whiskey brand's been around now for about 4 years. And, for us to be in a position to where we're the official whiskey of a major, franchise, was a big deal, and it just doesn't happen by chance. The other thing that you couple with hard work is a great team. I got a great team around me, guys that, if it's not me that's in front of someone, it's them in front of them, but they represent me as well. And so I have a great team around me. And so just happy with where it's at right now. But, we have a long way to go, but we're focused on getting to where we're trying to get to and having some fun with it, man.
Have a great night. We'll see you all weekend. Thanks for coming.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
That's Charles Woodson. More of our pre-draft coverage continues from Raiders headquarters.
Five-man rush. Young, look out for Wilkins. Down he goes. 35 of Carolina.
5 guys coming in after Bryce Young, but it's Christian Wilkins get that initial step into the gap. Miami brings 4. Allen in trouble. Lost the football. Is taken away from him. Christian Wilkins going in for the sack. Came in and took it away.
Christian Wilkins, their best interior pass rusher, going against the rookie, Osiris Torrance. Wow. The isolation is what's creating the havoc now for Josh Allen.
What a play.
What's up, Raider Nation? It's EA. On this special edition of Microsoft Breakdown, we're looking at one of the newest Raiders we signed in free agency. The most important position on the defense is not cornerback. It's defensive tackle, the guy who lines up right close to the football. We have a great one here in Christian Wilkins. We're going to show here, the first thing you think about when you're talking about defensive linemen is, hey, man, is he powerful? Can he stop the run? Yes, our guy can stop the run. Christian is just a powerful football player. He really gets it done from that aspect. I mean, he's just toying around with this guard, basically, standing up, finding out which hole the running back is trying to go through. You throw the guard into the other hole, and then you make the play on the running back. He's just shredding blockers, throwing them around, makes the play on the running back, plays with great energy, with great passion. Think about a defensive line, where it all starts. You have to stop the run. You have to be able to force football teams in understanding that you are an impact player. You're someone that can get after the quarterback from any place on the line of scrimmage. Just imagine Malcolm Kuntz on one side, Max Crosby on the other side, and you have Christian in the middle, lined up over the center. Great job of reaching, using his power to basically run right through the center. So it gives that quarterback and that running back, like, there's nowhere to go. You have to try and bounce this ball outside because he's just so dominant. You love the activity, the pre-snap movement. He's just showing you what a gamer he really is and understands, I have the A-gap, and I'm going to take the A-gap away on the way to sacking the quarterback, right? Imagine this is third down, critical time in the game. You have to find a way to get pressure in the middle of the football field to make that guy escape. Another outstanding move, just a power move, runs right through the guard to get to the quarterback. It's just not the power move. It's the power to speed. It's the finesse that he continues to employ. I really, really love the way Christian Wilkins plays football. Can he pass rush? Of course he can pass rush. Can he use his moves? Of course he can use his moves. These guys are going to really start the defensive dominance here. And one more time, he's a baller. And I'm going to sack you, take the ball away, and make a play for myself. Just a one-man wrecking crew. You love this opportunity for him to continue to play well, play with this kind of passion about the game. And Josh Allen is no little guy. Josh Allen's a pretty big dude, but I just showed you right there what Christian Wilkins can do. That's it for this episode of Microsoft Breakdown.
To be a Raider is to be bold, powerful, and loyal.
Once a Raider, always a Raider.
Raider Nation family is authentic, with the heart here in Las Vegas. We are often imitated, but can never be duplicated. Why?
The autumn wind is a Raider.
Because there is only one nation.
Yeah, and here's where I think it ultimately comes down to, right? And this is probably these are probably some of the conversations that are going on at a much higher level inside the Raiders draft room right now. But they could be looking at this and saying, once 13 comes up, all right, we've got probably an opportunity to draft the third or fourth tackle on our board. How much higher or lower is that player than the first or second corner that might be available as well? And how does that dichotomy really match up in terms of our value and how we place it there at 13? So is the third tackle higher than the first corner, or is that second corner higher than the fourth tackle? Those are the type of things that you have to weigh out. In a 7-round mock draft that I just completed and filed to Raiders.com, which you're going to see a little bit later this week, I actually have them taking the corner in the second round at pick 44, going with Max Melton, really good player with inside-outside flexibility from Rutgers, was one of the best in the Big Ten, ran a 40 in 4.39. So he's got all the speed, got all the traits, and is a real smooth guy in coverage, was down at the Senior Bowl as well. So that's another way to look at it there when you get to round 2.
Well, welcome back to Raiders Roundtable, and there was Red, and Raiders.com is your home for in-depth coverage and exclusive content surrounding the Silver and Black. As Red just said, he posted it. It's out there. His 2024 7-round mock draft. He and the Silver and Black have been working hard on this, taking Michael Penix in the first round and drafting the corner, as he said, in round 2. For all 7 rounds, head over to Raiders.com. As we're kind enough to bring in studio Vinny Bonsignore from everything, pretty much, our radio network, Vegas Nation. And Vinny, thanks a lot for doing this. And we're counting down here a little over 40 minutes till the first round begins. And let's get some of your excitement about how big this first round is going to be for the entire NFL.
Yeah, no doubt. And as I sit here 40 minutes or so from the first round, I just start thinking about everything that led up to this. Going back to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, Indiana, for the scouting combine, the countless hours that scouts have put in this throughout all of last season, and the coaches and the general manager jumping on board at some point as well, for it all to lead up to this point, and all the work that's been put into this. And quite frankly, even with all that work, it's still, will it work? Is this the right player? Will this player turn out to be really good or not? A back-end rotation type of a guy. You just don't know. And you've done all your work to try to make sure that you maximize every single pick that you have, knowing full well that it still might not work out. And it's insane thinking about all that work and expertise that's put into it.
Yeah, no other guys, you two, have the pulse of the fan base, the team, been around it forever. Vinny, when you think about the fan base, what are they craving for?
Well, first of all, I sense more excitement for this draft than any that I've been a part of covering the Raiders, and that goes back to 2020 now. And I think it's because it's a combination of things. I think the fans really connected with Antonio Pierce. I think that reflects how the players connected with Antonio Pierce. The momentum that they built to end last season, the fact that this defense finished, the 9th best defense in the league in terms of giving up points. When does that ever happen with the Raiders? And not to mention you still have Devontae Adams and Michael Mayer, an emerging player, and Jacoby Myers. I feel like Raider fans feel like this is not as far off as it's ever been in a long time. And with the right picks, first round, whether it's a quarterback or an offensive line or the cornerback, and then on through the draft, if you make some correct picks and get some impact players, especially with those first 3 picks, you could really put yourself in a pretty good position. So I sense a lot of excitement. There's always anxiety among the fan base, and you could talk to 50 Raider fans and you're going to get 50 different answers on where they should go, whether it's a specific player or a specific position at 13. But I think at the end of the day, and especially when Tom Telesco sits and talks with us later on today, whether it's one player or 2 players, a cornerback or a tackle or a quarterback or some kind of combination of those 2 positions, I think when he gets out there and talks to Raider fans, he'll make it make sense, and I think Raider fans will sign off on it.
The quarterbacks on the roster, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, and this is unique to me because we just saw Zach Wilson go to the 12th team slot in Denver, and then we spent a lot of time talking about that off the air. If this team doesn't have Gardner Minshew, then the quarterback becomes a real priority because you need someone there. Now that Gardner Minshew's here and Aiden O'Connell earned the job for Antonio Pierce to get the interim tag taken off, walk me through this potential quarterback pick for the Raiders with the 2 quarterbacks that are already in the building.
Well, you have to look at it as, and Tom Telesco, not unlike any general manager out there, he's not just looking at this next season, but the next 4 or 5 seasons, and especially when it comes to a quarterback, maybe the next 10 seasons, 12, 15 seasons. So I don't think that the current roster will play any kind of a role in whether or not they take a quarterback. It might deter them from overly reaching for a quarterback because they feel comfortable with a Gardner Minshew and an Aiden O'Connell. You know basically what you're going to be able to get from those two players, and I think they feel comfortable that they could go out there, whether it's on Sunday, this Sunday, or September when the season starts, and be able to compete at a fairly high level with both of those two quarterbacks. But you're always looking to improve as well. And if there's an opportunity in this draft to significantly improve at that position, I think they're going to jump at that chance to do that.
Yeah. Speaking about the two quarterbacks, style of play. Now, when the quarterbacks that we see on the style of play of the Raiders seems a little bit different with Gardner Minshew and Aiden, right?
Yeah.
So these quarterbacks later round, which mold would they fit in?
That's a great question. And, I think obviously you're probably going to look for a scheme fit, something that's going to fit what you're trying to do. And that's on Luke Getsy, as the offensive coordinator, kind of figure that whole thing out. But I think, in this age, Eric, and you know this, as an offensive coordinator, you better be able to adapt to whatever the talent is on your team, specifically at quarterback. And I know that, going back to Chicago with Justin Fields, that was kind of a difficult situation, probably for any offensive coordinator, to kind of get him figured out and him in a right place to be able to take advantage of his skills, and sometimes, also trying to improve some of the skills that weren't quite there. But I think they have a prototype, I'm sure, of what they're looking for. But you look at this quarterback class, Jaden Daniels is not Drake May. Drake May is not Michael Penix. Michael Penix isn't Bo Nix. Bo Nix isn't Caleb Williams. So there's a bunch of different flavors of quarterback in this draft. There really isn't. They're all kind of unique to themselves when you really think about it. Penix, I don't see a comparison to him in this draft. I think he does things a lot different than some other quarterbacks in this draft, and vice versa for a Jaden Daniels compared to a Bo Nix. So at some point, you're going to have to figure out of those quarterbacks, and I think the three teams at the top of the draft have already made this decision. But beyond that, does JJ McCarthy fit better than a Michael Penix? Does Michael Penix fit better than a Bo Nix? And at that point, it's going to be what your scheme is and what your preference is. And I think I think this quarterback class has a chance to be pretty good. I want to go back to 2020's draft class, and I think it has a chance to be that caliber of a draft class where you've got a Jalen Hurts that's picked in the second round, a Jordan Love later on in the first round, Tua, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. When we always talk about, look at the 2021 draft class. All of them have been traded or they haven't been very good. Okay, great. But all you have to do is go back to the year before and see a class that was pretty darn good. And I think this class is going to be closer to 2020 than 2021.
What has changed in the last 2 to 3 weeks with Penix Jr. and JJ McCarthy? There were rumors and pretty comparable media saying that McCarthy can go 2 or 3. Michael Penix, late first round, second round, no way. He's on everybody's mock draft, maybe at 13 to the Raiders now. What has changed from a media perspective? Does it have a lot to do with what I think you're kind of reporting too, that those guys aren't going to make trades at 1, 2, and 3?
Right.
They're going to stay with the quarterback. I hope you're wrong. I hope that New England at 3 says it's not perfect and the phones start ringing. But if it's accurate and you're right, that all of a sudden Penix now, if those 3 are gone and J.J. McCarthy's gone at 4 because the Vikings trade up, all of a sudden the premium on Penix and Bo Nix shoots them up the draft boards. So I want to say that again. You don't believe those first 3 teams are going to trade out of those picks?
I don't. I'd be surprised. Now, you always leave room for a Godfather offer that where you're like, hey, are you really going to turn this thing down? Look at your roster and how much this might be able to help your roster. Are you really a quarterback away? Probably not. We are. We'll give you this for that. And so there's always that possibility. But, hearing Robert Kraft talk about we got to get a quarterback in this draft, understanding in Washington they bring in a Cliff Kingsbury. He's not coaching the linebackers. He's coaching the quarterback and that offensive coordinator and trying to get that thing right. So how do you help him? You give him a really good quarterback. And a great quarterback is just sitting in their lap, as is, I think, for the third quarterback in this draft. I like Drake May probably more than most. So I think if I'm New England, why would I pass on that? I know I can help my roster quite a bit by trading and getting a whole bunch of assets. But will those assets ever compare to what I might have missed in a Drake May? What if Drake May turns out to be Justin Herbert? Can you imagine Elliott Wolf sitting there going, we had that, and we traded it, and we got an offensive tackle, a defensive end. Great. But that's not winning you Super Bowls. You need that kind of a quarterback to win Super Bowls.
Yeah, my final one on quarterbacks, maybe day 2, say Penix is gone. We don't get Penix. Day 2, what about Spencer or Travis?
Yeah, I think Travis is kind of intriguing because, we saw him playing really well, and then his season comes to an abrupt end, unfortunately for the kid. So I think he's one of those guys that you can kind of draft and stash a little bit and try to develop, get him back, first of all, healthy and back on the field. For a Raiders team that has some insurance with a Gardner Minshew and an Aidan O'Connell, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Spencer Rattler also, but I think both of those quarterbacks are more of the project kind of a quarterback, which again brings us back to the strength in having an Aidan O'Connell and a Gardner Minshew right now in your room, giving you that confidence that, hey, even if you got a punt on quarterback, or even if it's a Spencer Rattler or another development caliber kind of a quarterback, it's okay, especially later on in the draft. It's okay because they feel like they feel confident that they're going to be able to compete with an Aidan O'Connell and a Gardner Minshew, and in the meantime, fortify that roster around them.
Let's move to the defensive side. Here's what our own James Jones said about the D.
For this season, yes. For this season, I'm cool with them leading us to the playoffs. And then for the next couple seasons, whether it's in free agency, whether it's back in the draft, then you could go get your quarterback. But we all know Kansas City Chiefs got the baddest quarterback in the planet. If his defense did not play the way that his defense played, especially in the playoffs or really all season, he does not have another Super Bowl ring. We all know Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers is not in that game without the defense. So for me, for years, you've been trying to find a quarterback. You had a really good one in Derek Carr, and it didn't work out the way you wanted to work out. Let's beef up that defense. Let's get some really good players on that defense, and let's try to stop some people and go to work. And I think Gardner Minshew and AOC, they can hold it down.
That's a really good point. You can get a starting corner to come in here, and that's another piece to a defense that should be somewhere between 6 to 10 overall, maybe even better. Where do you stand with that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you could get a special quarterback, Eric Allen type cornerback here in this draft, you're putting him, and here's the thing, what's different for me for that. In years past when I've covered this team, considering all the holes that they had on defense, even if you did draft a superstar caliber player, he's playing around not so good teammates, right? Now you put a Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo or a Terrion Arnold from Alabama onto this team alongside Nate Hobbs, across from Jack Jones, behind Christian Wilkins, guy by the name of Max Crosby. Tyree Wilson, what do we know about Tyree Wilson? He might be able to take a major step forward. Malcolm Coots, and behind them, emerging player like Trayvon Merrick and a great savvy veteran like Marcus Epps. All of a sudden you're going, that looks pretty good. It was really good last year, as it was. You add another stud cornerback to that room, and this defense has a chance to be elite. So I can definitely see them going to defense at 13 as well.
Yeah, did you see the development of players those last – and JT and I have been talking about that all day today, is defensively the development of some of those players the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season, and then bring a young guy in to be able to kind of learn. And those coaches seem like they really took another step too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard the argument of putting another young cornerback alongside other young cornerbacks in Nate Hobbs and Jack Jones. But at least from my perspective, they feel like old souls. Like they don't to me, they're not the young, oh my gosh, green between behind their ears, especially Nate Hobbs. I mean, this guy's been a playmaker now for a few years. He just needs to stay healthy. And Jack Jones, I felt, for all of his exuberance and passion and talking, and we know that he does it, when it gets right down to it, this guy could play some football and has a unique skill set and a unique demeanor to play that position and take chances, as we saw last year. Yeah. Make plays on balls for touchdowns. It's been a long time since we've seen that around here. So I don't buy that they'd be going that they would be playing alongside other quote unquote young players. They might be young in age, but in experience and makeup and demeanor, I like where Nate Hobbs and Jack Jones are. So to me, they're veteran players at this point.
I want to stay with the corner because the Terrion Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell, those aren't reaches. At 13, they're mocked to go there. Give or take 12 to 15, whatever. So if you take those players, they're going to play. In the past, and we're trying to look towards the future, in the past, the Raiders have reached a corner because they didn't have a second-round pick. So they took a corner in the first round. He's no longer here. The reaching at the corner position, going back to then Nnamdi Asomugha, the last good one, it has been a graveyard of corners in this organization who can't play their way on the team, let alone get out of their rookie contract. So I'm all for taking a corner if I know you're not going to move him, because I was kind of believing last year that Jacorian Bennett was going to start. We were going to leave him alone for an entire year. He's going to get burned. He's going to give up a couple of big ones, but he's going to get better. He's another guy that I feel like this is his rookie season, along with Tyree, if they can get something out of those two players.
Yeah, and all you have to do is look at Amik Robertson, look at Malcolm Kuntz. Not everybody's clock runs at the same time. You know, somebody like Amik came along. I mean, he always put himself in position to make the team because on special teams or when he was called upon, he was going to do some nice things. So he gave them no chance to, but to keep him on the team one way or another. Malcolm was kind of an afterthought, but he kept working at it, and he turned himself into a really good player. So a guy like Jacorian Bennett, who I think will benefit from all the experiences last year. Remember, he started the season. He did. He was a starting player. He got hurt, and that is always a problematic for a rookie player because Eric. When the NFL train starts chugging down the tracks, it's not slowing down for anybody. No. When you get hurt and you got to go over there and get fixed up and all that, the train's still going down. It's on you to go catch up to that train.
You're right.
And that's hard for anybody.
Difficult.
Let alone a rookie. So he did some nice things. He got hurt. He went back in there. There were some struggles, and sometimes that's bound to happen for a young player. Remember, he's a fourth-round pick, too.
Right.
But there's still a skill set there, and there's still a future there. So even if they don't go cornerback early on in this draft, you still got Jacorian Bennett. And I know people forget that Brandon Faison is on this team, but that's guy that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
He was just hurt last year.
Yes.
But he's a good, solid football player that has some history with Tom Telesco down there with the Chargers. So ideally they get another cornerback, but even if they didn't, or at least a day one starting caliber player, you still have Jacorian Bennett and Brandon Faison, and that's some good coverage right there.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's really what it's all about. And all day we've been talking fit, right? And that's really what you want to get, a guy who fits athletically, who fits the culture. And then it's Las Vegas. So now when we're going through our eval process, it's not like we can just pick the best player. We have to pick a player who fits everything.
For sure.
And that's really important, first and second picks for our team, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was blown away by Terrion Arnold in the times that I got a chance to exchange with him. Just a type A personality, extremely confident, extremely intelligent. He told us a story in Indianapolis about how he got benched or overtaken for his job. And it was by a teammate that he was really good friends with, actually. So, nothing personal against him. That's my guy, and good for him. But this isn't ever going to happen again. I am going to make sure that will never, ever happen again. And from that point on, and, you're playing for a legendary coach who's going to make sure that you're doing the right thing all the time. And not that he wasn't doing anything the right thing. He just got beat out, had been struggling a little bit on the field, and made sure that was never going to happen again. And just his exchange with Antonio Pierce there in Indianapolis, and how he kind of lit up the room a little bit. And I know Antonio was impressed, and Antonio ended up spending some time with him on the field at Terrion's pro day in Alabama. So I think there's a little bit of a connection there, and that Antonio knows the importance. Playing linebacker himself. First, he went out and got Christian Wilkins, the stud interior defensive lineman that they absolutely had to have and that he felt like they needed. And I know he's talked about, man, if you could just add a stud young cornerback alongside who we already have and the defensive linemen that are going to line up, it can really turn this defense into something, like I said, very elite.
All right, Vinny, lastly, we'll take a look here. It's the picks that are coming up for the Raiders and where the Raiders stand here. We're focusing on 13 for obvious reasons, but maybe they use something to move up into the first round again. Tell us what you think. You look at that board, you see the 7th round, the 6th round picks. What makes this a successful draft for the Las Vegas Raiders?
I think you have to come out with a quarterback and one of those top 6 quarterbacks. That's just my thought process. And somewhere between 13 and 44, I think you got to get that quarterback and an offensive lineman, the right tackle. And I think that It's there for the taking at 44. So if you go Penix at 13, even though it might be a quote-unquote little bit of a reach, I think there would be confidence that they could go find their right tackle at 44. So if you put those two together, it might reverse the order. You never know if Penix is going to be there at 44. Either way, come out with your offensive tackle and your quarterback. And then down the line, cornerback, go get another cornerback. I think some depth at linebacker. You got to look at those contract situations with a Robert Spillane and a Divine Diablo. There's no guarantee that either will be on the roster this time next year because they're both going in the last year of the contract. So try to come up with some depth there. I think a running back that could provide some coverage just in case Zamir's not able to take that next step forward. Wide receiver. I know that you got Jacoby Myers, you got Devontae Adams, but Devontae's not getting any younger. He's got a big number coming up next year. I think it's over $30 million that he's owed. It's non-guaranteed, but he's on the docket for $32 million. At some point, you got to look at finding somebody behind him, and then I think beefing up the defensive line, the interior of the defensive line. You can never have enough pass rushers. I don't know if they have enough picks to do all this, but somewhere along the line, I think there's some key areas that they're going to touch on.
We're asking everybody to put your name on it. The Las Vegas Raiders at 13 select
Michael Penix.
All right.
Oh.
All right. There you go. Get that quarterback.
You get that quarterback.
The fans right now are going, yeah!
As we wrap it up, that's what they wanted to hear. Vinny, what are you doing the rest of the night? I mean, you're going to be buried in the next couple of days. Where can we find all your work?
Yeah, Vegas.com is where all the work will be. I'm getting ready to head downstairs and now wait it out like everybody else. We've done all the predictions. We've done all our mock drafts. Now it's time for the real thing, and quite frankly, I can't wait.
You're the best. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you, guys.
Vinny Bonsignore. Coming up next, Rich Gannon with Lincoln Kennedy. How about that one? We're bringing out all the A-listers tonight. Live from headquarters, it's Raiders Roundtable.
Just a lot of excitement. A lot of hard work went into this, a lot of, sacrifices, and I'm excited to, start my career in the NFL, which I always envision myself playing.
With the 7th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Tyree Wilson, defensive end, Texas Tech.
It's different. I never went through this process before. It's all business, and I'm excited. Not everybody got the opportunity to go through that process, and I was blessed, so I had to take advantage of it. I mean, kind of crazy that this gonna be my home. First time living out of Texas. Really wasn't. It was just all the emotions in my back of my head. I wasn't really focused on the fans. It was going to commissioner, hugging them, and then, just thinking about my family. Really, all the hard work, the sacrifice they made for me to, get to where I am today. I knew it was the right fit. Yeah, I work hard, and I always envisioned myself getting here. Now it's time to continue it in the NFL. Tyree Wilson, defensive end, outside linebacker, Las Vegas Raiders. Being a Raider in all three, phases of my life is something that, God planned.
Over the past 5 years, people have been asking me, when are you guys going to have a gala? When are you going to have a ball? When we began our partnership with Las Vegas and the state of Nevada, we made a promise that you'd be getting more than a football team, that you'd be getting an army. We promised that we'd be working in the communities. We determined that mental health was something that was very important to everybody in this room. So we have decided to take this gala focused specifically on mental health.
Mental health touches every one of our pillars, but it also touches the lives of so many people in this room. We're proud to work with partners like the Resiliency and Justice Center to expand resources and services in Nevada.
It's our honor to be able to present your organization with $500,000 from the Raiders Foundation.
Tonight, when we walked in here, I had no idea that we would get a check for $500,000. With this support, I have no doubt that this construction and this center will become a reality.
The Silver and Black stand by and support the efforts of this community. These people have exemplified hard work, dedication, leadership, and are truly committed to excellence.
I mean, just look behind us. 1,000+ people, packed house with the win. You got our head coaches behind it. You got our players here, got our staff here. It's serious. It's real.
10,000, center right now. 11 now, going to go 12, get it 12. 12 now, going to go 13. 16 now, going to go 19, get it 16.
What I think about the Raiders bringing more awareness to this, what I love is it's a conversation now about it, and I think it's beautiful.
At the end of the day, like, this is Las Vegas. This is us. More importantly, they understand the Raiders NFL is behind it. It's serious. I've dealt with a lot of players that I play with, good friends of mine that they struggle. And for us to get back is huge.
Hey, Raider Nation, Lincoln Kennedy here in the beautiful Omni nightclub atop the Caesars Palace in beautiful Las Vegas, home of the Raider Nation. And I've got my guy. You know I've got to protect this guy. Even when we played, I had to protect him. But no need for a long introduction. Rich Gannon to my left. Rich, how you doing, boss?
Link, I am doing great. I am so excited to be in Vegas. I am so excited for what's going to happen here in a few minutes, this draft. I mean, this is so important to all 32 teams, but especially our Las Vegas Raiders.
No doubt about it. Can you imagine the amount of energy that has garnered over the years for the draft? It's not just here. I mean, it's everywhere. Now the draft's traveling around. It was here in Vegas last year. It's in Detroit this year. But if you will, take us back for a moment to your experience with the draft and when you were coming out, how it felt for you.
You know, Link, it's crazy. I got drafted in 1987. There weren't even any cell phones then, right? And I can remember not even having ESPN in my apartment. So I had to go up to a buddy's apartment. We had to run a phone line up the side of the apartment so that the phone, would be available for all the teams. And so I heard my name called late in the day as a 4th-round pick. I got drafted by the New England Patriots.
Right.
And 6 days later, I got traded to the Minnesota Vikings. The Patriots didn't even want me to play quarterback. So everybody's draft day's experience is different. I was disappointed on my draft day because I went to a team that didn't want me to play quarterback. Right. So, I always tell people it doesn't necessarily matter where you go, when you go. It's what you do with that opportunity.
In your estimation, Rich, what does it feel like for a young man to get a call from the team and say, we're going to pick you with our pick?
I mean, it could be a life-changing experience. I mean, it's an opportunity of a lifetime. I always say, Link, it's like a driver's license. You're not everybody gets the driver's license and keeps it. If you don't stay in the lane, if you drink and drive, and you run into cars, they take away that privilege. It's the same thing in the NFL. You get a great opportunity, but it's what you do with that opportunity that matters the most. Are you a guy that comes in early and stays late? Are you passionate about football? Are you someone who's very coachable? Physical, mental toughness, all those qualities and intangibles that we look for, Link, in every position. Right. Offensive line, defensive back, quarterback, you have to have them, especially if you want to play for the Raiders.
Rich, is there a standout moment in the locker room that can really transcend a kid or make him really understand that he's on the next level?
Yeah, I think that moment you get into the locker room for the first time and you see that jersey with your name on it and that Raider helmet with the silver and black, and you start looking around at the Super Bowl trophies, and you start looking around at the people that played for this organization that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I just walked in with James Lofton and Marcus Allen.
Yeah.
And I think, the opportunity to play for, an owner like Mark Davis, to play for an organization that was really put on the map by his father, Al Davis. So, I just think that moment can be a lot, but I think it's how you handle it. And I think, the great players are able to process and absorb a lot of information in a short period of time, but it's unbelievable. And I think, you and I were blessed to play on some great teams.
Certainly.
I just think it's the relationships that you build. And not only that, but the trust. Trust is so important. I trust that you're going to do the job. You trust them to get the ball out on time. I trust the coaches to get the play in on time. I trust the organization is going to get the best players for us and give us the best facilities. it's a lot of trust that takes place as you build what you hope is going to be a championship team.
You know, you speak of trust, and Antonio Pierce, when he got the job last year, we saw a newfound energy in this team on both sides of the ball, but most notably in defense, one that we hadn't seen for a while. So when you talk about trust and building the experience from Coach AP, taking that next level, that next step to draft those players that he feels going to gel into that locker room. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think AP stepped into a really difficult situation. Sure. Link, you lived it. You know, you were part of it, calling the games for the Raiders last year, and I just think that the players respected him. He's a former player. He's he didn't come to the league with a silver spoon in his mouth. He's had a fight and claw for every opportunity. I think players gravitate towards that. I think he was honest and real with them. I think he's very transparent. I think he told the players what had to change. I think the players embraced that, and I think the players really believed that he was the right leader at the right time. And I just think that, in talking to AP, I think he's got a lot of the qualities and characteristics that you love at that position. I think he's tough physically and mentally. I think he's going to put together a team that plays to that style, that Raiders style of football, of being tough and physical and getting after people on both sides of the ball. And I think he's a guy you can trust. I think that's really important. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but I'm excited. I think the change in the culture and the environment in that locker room began to take place last year. I think it'll continue to take place this year as they continue to bring in more and more of those type of players. I said a long time ago, we had 40 players like Max Crosby, we would never lose a game.
True story.
You know what I mean? But you want to find those type of players that just love football. Max
Crosby has wind himself into a franchise player. And coming in, a lot of times with the draft, especially with the first pick, there are people who expect that player to be a franchise player. So what are some of the characteristics that stand out to you that franchise player needs to have?
Well, I think I always start with physical and mental toughness. I think that's really important. This is a tough game to play. You're going to be struck with adversity. How do you handle adversity? I think that work ethic, I think about Max Crosby. He's another guy that was not a first-round pick, but just worked his way into being one of the best players at his position in football. So I think that's important, Link. I think accountability, dependability, we want players that go out and play to a certain standard each week. We talk about players that don't have a lot of mistakes and mental errors and missed assignments. I think players that you can count on, that you can depend on. I think, it's all about production and consistency and week in and week out. And I think that's what you look for in a first-round pick.
All right, Rich, I'm going to challenge you. You're a veteran of the game. You covered games with CBS and you did games with us Raiders, so I know you know football. But if you're in the war room, the Raiders got number 13 pick. You got that hat on, that GM hat, to make that decision. Where would you see the Raiders go at 13? Trade up, trade back?
Well, I think there's definitely some conversations that have been taking place, and maybe even as we speak right now, about the possibility of moving up, maybe grabbing one of those quarterbacks. But, Link, I think there's so much emphasis when you look at who's picking first. Chicago, you look at Washington, New England, all these teams need quarterbacks. The Vikings have some firepower.
Yeah.
They've got 2 first-round picks, and they're going to try and make a move to jump up. At some point, the Raiders have to make a decision. How much do you want to give up to get one of those quarterbacks that's not in the top 3? And in my sense of it all is I wouldn't do that. I think there's other needs as well. I think the fact that they signed Gardner Minshew, I think when you look at Aiden O'Connell's development last year, he stepped into a difficult situation. Did some really good things. Is the quarterback that you're going to get the 5th or 6th guy, is he any better than those 2 players? And in order to give up that much to get him, you have to be absolutely convinced that this guy is a franchise quarterback, a guy that's going to go to multiple Pro Bowls and take you to championship games. And I think that to me, I'm not quite sure that quarterback is going to be still standing there when the Raiders pick.
He's my guy, everyone. Raider Nation former MVP Rich Gannon. We're out at the Omnia nightclub at Caesars Palace. Come down and join us. We'll be here all night while the draft is going on. We're looking for some fun. Raider Nation, we got you. See you soon.
That was fantastic.
Yes, awesome.
That was fantastic.
Yes.
I could listen to Rich Gannon for hours on end, and he's playing it more the conservative side.
Yep.
Don't give up a lot. Don't give up a lot. There are other needs here, and Rich knows this organization real well.
Oh, he does, and he was a fantastic football player, and all of those characteristics that he talked about of being a first-round draft pick were point on, consistency, accountability, all those things we want to see in players that are drafted, not just here, but all over.
Mm-hmm.
You want the best for all these young men. But, again, those 2 guys were amazing to play with, right? They commanded respect. They did it the right way. A lot of time in the film room. I remember leaving the building late, and Rich and Link were right there with me. And so that's kind of the players you need on your football team to make your push really relevant and getting to meaningful games at the end of your careers.
Mock draft season is over. It ends in 20 minutes here, so let's take a look at the players most mocked to the Raiders. Michael Penix Jr., Fuaga there. Wow, Arnold, the cornerback, the cornerback you like, Quinyon Mitchell, and then J.C. Latham, the offensive lineman. I think the fans and the mock guys and gals know best. That's kind of where we are today, and I think Penix has come on strong in the last 10 days, and even more so today because I think people are starting to say that those first 3 teams aren't going to move out of the pick, and I'm hoping one of them does. I hope the Raiders are able to convince either the 2 or 3 team to jump out and make a big offer here, but it's starting to look like those teams need quarterbacks just as bad as the Silver and Black.
Yeah, it's important. I think our game right now, you have to have someone that you believe in, that's going to be able to get you to places when you're behind. It's going to win games for you. And we saw Jordan Love. I mean, at the end of the season, man, did he make a huge jump? Yeah, right? So all these young quarterbacks are able to kind of find their groove and play at their own kind of speed and pace. And that's so important in this league to have a quarterback that you can depend on.
In our building, we beat Lamar Jackson in his first game. We beat a lot of good quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, we beat him in the building here. You look at the quarterbacks that come in really hot, and the Raiders were able to beat him at Allegiant Stadium. But quarterback, and I like the 2 quarterbacks here. I got to give those guys credit from what they're hearing in the background, right? Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew are hearing every day what we're hearing, that the Raiders are interested in quarterback. But again, I think if we played on this Sunday, the Raiders would not be weak at the quarterback position. We can win with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. All right, my friend, I'm going to go first with my scenario. We'll save you the best for last here. I was talking Fuaga the last 10 games. I just love his game, the research. Everybody I talk to think that he is just born to be a Raider. But, however, as my buddy Stephen A. would say, I'm on the Penix train now. I saw him play. I like the arm strength. I like his ability to do great things for the Raiders. I don't love him like Jaden Daniels, but I like him enough there at 13. So my scenario would be to take him at 13, but then trade back into the first round to get the tackle. Now, if it's Fuaga and they take him at 13, I'll be real happy. If they can immediately trade in to get Penix, I think that's going to be too hard to do. So between Fuaga and Penix, I love Fuaga, but my gut feeling tells me they want a quarterback. They want a franchise quarterback, and they're going to go get Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, I think so. I'm along those lines, but I'm going to tell you, if you can get who I think is the best cornerback in the draft this year, Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo, I think you have to get him if he's there. And he has all the measurables, and then all those things we talked about handling adversity. I think at the Senior Bowl, he had a great Senior Bowl. The practices leading up to the Senior Bowl, people saying he blew everyone away. So I think you go there first because he's one of the best at the position. And later on, corners, you're kind of up and down. And then I'm like you. I think you try and move back up in the draft in the first round, and that's where you get Penix and you get your quarterback who doesn't have to play right away because you have Gardner Minshew and you have guys who are going to be competitive at the quarterback position. And I think along the lines of having someone you feel like can fit your program, can fit what you want the Raiders to do, there's no one in this draft, I don't think that there was a better deep ball than Penix, and I think that matches very well with what we want to do as Raiders.
Yeah, I think I speak for a lot of people. What I want most is consistency.
Yeah.
Last year we were sitting here, everything has changed. A regime change, a coaching change, everything has changed. Now Tom Telesco is leading the charge along with Antonio Pierce and the scouting department, and I'd like to see that this group can work together for a couple of seasons, 3-4 seasons, and really tighten up the edge of that defense, which is really good. Just put one more piece in there or two. I think the offense needs a kickstart, and it has to happen tonight or tomorrow. And then the offense, we could look at it going into Allegiant Stadium or on the road saying the defense is legit, and our offense, if we need to score in bunches, can do it because of the X amount of talent we brought in.
Yeah, and no matter what, JT, I know from the past 6 or 7 weeks, whoever we get is going to get better in the building. And that's so important for these young men who are coming in to understand that. And I hope they know that right away, that you know what? When you come in here, you may be great and you may have an outstanding college career, but you're going to get better. And for me as a player, if I heard that, man, I'm ready to roll.
So everybody tune into ESPN for the draft, and everybody come back here tomorrow. We're on from 2 to 4 tomorrow.
Let's get it. I'm ready to
hey,
go.
Look, we got a big night in front of us. The draft party's going on. You saw
That's
Rich
right.
Gannon?
Yeah.
I'm heading over there to see some of the fans. It should be a lot of fun. We want to thank everyone. The team we have in the other room is the best in the business. This is a really big deal that they were able to pull off with this lineup. The insiders, the legends, C. Wood, the Hall of Famer.
What a great
so it's an
interview.
honor. For Eric Allen, I'm JT. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of Raiders Roundtable, brought to you by America First Credit Union. Have a great draft night, everyone.